This is WURD Radio,
96.1 FM
and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia.
Black Talk Media.
The views and opinions expressed by the guests, listeners, and hosts of any program on WURD Radio do not necessarily reflect those of ownership, management, or advertisers of this station.
All right, everyone, welcome to Reality Check. It is the Thursday end of the holiday week Reality Check edition here on the home of Black Talk Media, none other than WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Welcome back. Welcome to Thursday edition of Reality Check. Obviously, there is no City Council Live, so City Council on holiday break. Normally, we have our City Council live sessions on Thursdays, but since we have a holiday break for the Philadelphia City Council, obviously we are taking a break from that until their next session of the whole. That'll be later on in January. Of course, we will be keeping you posted until then and also telling you about the next or the latest City Council committee hearings. There'll probably be committee hearings or special committee hearings. It all depends on what crisis pops up or what City Council decides they want to focus on or they want to elevate to into action. So, that all between now and obviously until the council meets as a whole later on in January. But welcome to the program. Phone lines are open in the meantime. 215-634-8065. Toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065. 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Welcome to the program. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Sojourner Ahabi is going to be joining us a little bit later on in the 10 o'clock hour. She did some recent reporting where she's focusing on the two wards in Philadelphia that had the lowest voter turnout during the 2020 election cycle. So we're going to be talking with her about that a little bit later on in the 10 o'clock hour. Phone lines will be open too in case you have a question. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Also, just a little bit of developing news, slightly breaking news coming out of Washington, D.C. House Republicans blocking an effort by House Democrats to approve President Trump's proposal for $2,000 stimulus payments, those controversial $2,000 stimulus payments, which are holding up the emergency pandemic relief bill, or otherwise known as the stimulus package that Congress was able to pass with the $600 stimulus payment. Donald Trump throwing a wrench in that action and saying that that's unacceptable, that is too little. I want $2,000 stimulus payments. And so House Democrats were more than happy to oblige, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who tweeted back fairly quickly to President Trump, who demanded this on Tuesday night. And she said, okay, well, listen, if you want $2,000 payment, we actually wanted more, but, you know, 2,000, those were one of the numbers that we had been floating about. And we had Congresswoman Madeleine Dean on here yesterday who was talking about some of the proposals she had been putting forward earlier on, especially early on in the summer as we were in the throes of pandemic, throes of shutdown, or at least lockdowns, or just kind of coming up out of them. And Democrats were seeking to go ahead and get that approved. Interestingly enough, Democrats, even though they're the majority in the House, Republicans were able to block that measure based on a procedural move called unanimous consent. And so that definitely that poses a problem as far as the passage. You know, right now still the passage or the signature by the president of this coronavirus relief package is in doubt. Well, I don't know. It's not necessarily in doubt at the moment, but it definitely is in a very uncertain pattern at this moment. Unanimous consent. What is that? It's a legislative procedure. It's used by members or legislators in the House, and you'll have one or two legislators who will request approval by all legislators. All legislators have to approve rule changes in bills. So they weren't able to get unanimous consent on that $2,000 that proposal for a $2,000 stimulus payment. So that's kind of where we are at the moment now as far as the emergency relief package. And that emergency relief package is attached to federal government funding. There was a $1.4 trillion federal government funding bill supposed to keep the federal government open until September, or keep it funded, till September. So that also is uncertain at the moment. The president also vetoing the National Defense Authorization Bill. That's a separate funding package or federal funding package for the military. So he apparently still has issues about the removal of the removal of names of Confederate generals from military bases, which that should have never happened in the first place. Not sure how. Well, we do know why. Treasonous enemy combatants of the state are somehow having their names for so many years adorning U.S. military bases. So we're finally the history is catching up and people are becoming much more aware of that. President rejecting that notion and vetoing the National Defense Authorization Act, but more than likely Congress already has the votes to override that veto. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065. Phone lines are open. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. I had a really interesting conversation I was on Keeping It Real with Reverend Al Sharpton yesterday. By the way, last week I was on Keeping It Real with Reverend Al Sharpton last Friday because I couldn't make it Wednesday last week. But I had an interesting conversation with him and with a few listeners about rumors or various pieces of disinformation that are circulating through the online space. Be very aware of where you are getting your information. So if I posed this question to a listener, someone who had called into Keeping It Real with Reverend Al Sharpton, and he was making this assertion about the insertion of microchips into the body through vaccines. And he was talking about this patent application. This is what he was saying. It was a patent application that was submitted by Bill Gates, who was, formerly the founder, CEO of Microsoft. He basically retired from Microsoft. He still gets money from Microsoft, but he retired from Microsoft. He's, pretty much kind of doing, all these various philanthropic efforts. But, he was like, he submitted this patent. The patent application is 060. He had the number 060606, and it's a patent for a microchip that you inject into the body. And so this is the key question here when I start hearing assertions or claims like that. Where did you first get that from? He couldn't answer that question. And so the call, some of you here on WURD might have heard that session yesterday. So the listener, he got belligerent. And I had a very simple question. I wasn't trying to, at that moment, disparage him. I'm really curious. Where did you get that information? Where did you first see that claim? He wouldn't answer that. Not that he couldn't answer that. He wouldn't answer that because he kind of kept going around my just basic question. Did you get it from the New York Times? If you got it from the New York Times, you got it from the Washington Post, did you get it from the Philadelphia Inquirer? Or did you, or I don't know, maybe you got it from Vox.com or Politico.com. Just tell me, what's your source? What's your legitimate, credible media source where you picked up this claim or this information? He could not tell me that, which in and of itself is very telling. There are people who are first being exposed to different claims or pieces of information when they read a Facebook post. I've been seeing it on countless occasions. I see it like kind of within my own, inner circle or network of, friends, colleagues, families. I've been in situations where I've had a family member will send out a blast text, which is annoying, but we'll send out like a text to 20, 30 different family members and then, or friends, and it's a screenshot of a Facebook post making some sort of interesting, fascinating, or conspiracy-laden claim. And, really 100% of the time when I check those claims, they don't pan out. You can easily fact check these claims. And so we really have to get into sessions. We're going to have to figure out, some new sort of, I don't know if it requires a segment or if it just requires a bit more diligence here on my part where, we start making an effort to refute these claims. There is no such thing. There is a patent application like Microsoft, Microsoft, not Bill Gates, Microsoft, the company, did submit a patent application with the number 060606 in it. That's not the full patent application, but it's a system. The patent is for a system which rewards cryptocurrency for physical activity. So the way it works is that the application, like the patent application, was for a system whereby different tasks are given to users of the system, right? And once you complete participation, or once you complete those tasks, you're rewarded with bitcoins or, cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is a general name for like this new digital currency, and Bitcoin is one of those cryptocurrencies. There's a number of other cryptocurrencies that are out there as well. So the information is collected from a sensor and coupled with or potentially within a user's device to determine whether those tasks have been completed. So it's like the sensor is within the device. It's nothing that gets injected. There's nothing in there about injecting. There's nothing in that application. I checked this out. And I had already checked this out too because I had heard this sort of floating about, this rumor that, there's some patent application that injects microchips into the body. That's just simply not the case. Please do not trust posts on Facebook, particularly if those posts are coming from either personal friends of yours or family. I know you want to trust your friends, and I know you want to trust your family as well. But if it's not like the Facebook page of a legitimate, credible, mainstream news outlet, or even a credible, legitimate, verified black or community news outlet that you can trust and that is legit. They have like basically trained journalists who work for that particular outlet or organization. But if it's not coming from a source like that, if it's just simply a post that someone has copied and pasted from somewhere else, or they found it, and especially if you go into a Facebook page where you're seeing a lot of ideological rhetoric, don't trust it. Don't trust it. There's a lot of folks out there who are getting duped. But this is exactly one of the reasons why I deleted my Facebook page. This is one of the primary reasons why I deleted my Facebook page. I will highly recommend a lot of other people out there do too. And I know sometimes I go to the comments section on the Facebook Live page for WURD TV because I have to, and I'm curious, and I love when people watch us on WURD TV. You can also go to youtube.com/onWURD. There is just so much disinformation out there. And you heard Dr. Walks, we had Dr. Ivan Walks here on Monday, and he was saying, he's like, I don't know about conspiracy theories. He said, but I do know, and he's very much right on this, I do know that there is a conspiracy by very sinister forces and interests that seek to target us, deliberately target us with all sorts of disinformation, with bits and pieces of lies and conspiracy theories to get us rattled or to create very dangerous situations for us. And specifically, I mean, we even saw, like in the 2016 election, the Senate Intelligence Committee did a whole report on, they actually did two reports on this, two very comprehensive reports on how Russians and white nationalists specifically targeted black populations online and on social media. Let me get Abdul Jabbar out of West Philly, who's calling in for a reality check. Abdul Jabbar?
Good morning, brother. How you doing?
Good morning, brother. All right.
Okay, so, when this whole video came out, I saw a video of Donald Trump speaking about this cares about the stimulus bill and his dissatisfaction for the bill.
Right.
You talked about that this morning. So my concern is this. Okay, the stimulus package and the way he broke it down, I mean, is that fact that everything he mentioned that didn't have anything to do with the coronavirus was actually inserted in a bill where there was funding going to all of these foreign interests and funding for counting fish? And I understand that part may be a bit ambiguous in how it's expressed because that's part of the ecological situation. So I'm not going to argue the part about the counting fish. But what about the foreign interests, the money going to these foreign countries? How about that? That's just disgusting. I mean, would you say that you believe that that part is true?
It is true. I mean, there is a provision in there. For example, it's about $500 million that was being provided for the Israeli military to create a new missile defense system. So yeah, and that, I mean, it's a bill that's over 5,700 pages long. Most legislators are not and their staff are not reading those bills, particularly when they're trying to rush to get things passed. They're just primarily looking at the top line, and all they're seeing is, okay, we're going to spend $900 billion, which is not even really, they're not even spending $900 billion, Abdul Jabbar, now. They're actually, they're using about $500 billion unused money from the previous CARES Act, and then they're pushing that forward, and then they're adding another $400 billion onto that to make 900. So it's not even a complete, so there's, yes, so that's misleading as well. But you're absolutely right. There is one prominent provision that a lot of people are talking about and should be rightfully outraged about, because that has absolutely nothing to do with pandemic relief. I mean, he's building a missile defense system to destroy or obliterate coronavirus. I mean, is there something special about this missile defense system we don't know about? It contains vaccine. So yeah, there are things. I mean, on that score, he's correct. I mean, if that's something I didn't know he was, because he's a very prominent friend to the Israeli prime minister and the Israeli military. Trump is very pro-Israel, so I don't know why he would suddenly have a problem with that. I mean, well, I do know. I mean, this is all about, one, this is feeding his ego, and then two, this was a ploy to keep people distracted from all these pardons he gave over the past couple of days. But go ahead, Abdul Jabbar.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate your expressing that, because there are a lot of us out here that this whole political system is very complex for people. I realize at 51, and bear with me when I say this, right? With all due respect, I wish I never picked up a drink. I wish I never drank, because I wish that my mind had never been clouded to the point where I was able to focus on the things that were relevant in the environments where we grow up. Like you said, African Americans are targeted. We drive around in our neighborhoods. There's so many things that keep us from being in a critical state of thinking. And at the end of the day, by the time we realize what has happened, it's like it's either too late or we're in a critical state of being. And I'm just saying, not like I became an alcoholic or nothing, but just the partying. They constantly targeting us with liquor. They constantly targeting us with weed. These things that take us out of our chain of thought that we should be focused on, and we should be more engaged politically, especially locally. Because what's happening is right under our noses, we are being pushed to the side as if we're like we don't matter. And then shows like yours and stations like WURD attempt to facilitate, some type of change by giving us the information. But when you put out the information, there are people that don't even really understand what's in front of them. So if you will, at some point throughout the day, let's play that snippet he put out and kind of break it down for people again, because they're really confused about what's going on. You have a happy holiday, everybody at the station. Thank you, guys. Keep doing a great job. See you in 2021.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thanks so much, Abdul Jabbar. But yeah, there's some noise, there's some concerns about that, about what exactly else other than pandemic relief does the COVID-19 emergency relief bill change? And you're absolutely right. I don't like being pegged. I don't like it when my community and my people are being pegged as low information social media users or low information voters. And I don't think you should be. And I noticed the frustration. I hear the anger, the justifiable anger in Abdul Jabbar's voice. I don't think he likes it either. So, that's why people have to be absolutely careful. I'll sit here and I'll admit I did not read. I have not had the time to read the entire 5,700 page bill, pandemic relief, emergency relief bill. So there are still pieces of it. You're still getting like news reports here and there about different provisions within it. To a large degree, I mean, the majority of the funds in the pandemic relief bill are being used for things directly for pandemic relief, economic relief, also being used for first responders and medical care, et cetera, to boost healthcare infrastructure. But there's some other questionable items in there as well. And that happens during during the sausage making process, as they call it, when members are drafting legislation. And that isn't just happening in Congress. I mean, it happens in legislature, city, state, and federal, and members and legislators, lawmakers, particularly those who are highly skilled, who have been in the legislature for a very long time, they know how to hide these things. So it's just up to us to kind of keep a watchful eye on it and to find them and to expose them and to be as transparent as possible about this policy. But let me take a break so we can bring on Sojourner, our Vote Beat reporter, Sojourner Ahebe, who's going to be joining us next to talk about low voter turnout in 2 Philly wards. So we'll get more information on that once we take a break here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
America's biopharmaceutical companies are making progress against COVID-19, now with several promising vaccine candidates in phase 3 clinical trials. With an effort to include people from every walk of life, these trials involve tens of thousands of participants. From development to clinical trials and throughout the manufacturing process, these medicines and vaccines are rigorously tested for safety and effectiveness. Go to pharma.org/coronavirus for updates. Because science is how we get back to normal. Paid for by Pharma.
Hi, this is Jeff Brown from Brown's Family ShopRites and Fresh Grocers. Are you thinking about a part-time job to help out with the cost of the holidays? We have plenty of openings. You can apply online at shoprite.com/careers or freshgrocer.com/careers. Come join the Brown family today and help us serve the people of Philadelphia. Have a great holiday.
Did you know you can catch the flu and COVID-19 at the same time or even back to back? Don't risk catching the flu during the COVID-19 pandemic. The flu shot is a safe and effective way of reducing your chances of catching the flu or spreading it to others. And the flu shot helps protect you and your community from the worst effects of the flu. Don't say, I should have got my flu shot. Call your doctor or visit your pharmacist and get your flu shot today.
Always Best Care is a great place to work. Flexibility,
leadership, purpose,
great benefits.
There's never a dull moment.
Diversity, inclusion, compasión.
We love our jobs. If you're looking for a great place to work, you can join our compassionate Team Green. You can apply online at teamgreenabc.com or call 267-909-9248.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Reality check
with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
To Reality Check, our Vote Beat reporter assigned to WURD is Sojourner Ahebe. She is at Sojourner Ahebe on social media, on Twitter.com. She's been doing some wonderful reporting on the 2020 election before, during, and after. We're in the aftermath of it. She's been doing some great post-mortem analysis. She's been joining us here every week on Reality Check. And we've got her at our end of the holiday week edition of Reality Check. She joins us by phone. Sojourner, how are you doing?
I'm good. Good morning. How are you?
All right. Good morning. Good morning. So there were two wards that you've identified in recent reporting that had the lowest voter turnout in the city during this 2020 election. What are those two wards, and how bad was the turnout?
Absolutely. So the first ward is Ward 27. So essentially that encompasses a part of University City, particularly the UPenn and Drexel side, and then it goes into a little bit of West Philly, and then a catchment area of Southwest. So essentially what happened was, because a lot of the students had to leave in the advent of the pandemic, and the student composition of that ward is about 1/3 of the whole ward. So student turnout really kind of sways what turnout overall looks like, even if there was high turnout in the other 2/3. So when those students weren't there to actively vote in person, a lot of students moved back home and decided to vote, in their own states. And even students who were registered to vote in Philadelphia but ended up leaving and registering somewhere else, they stayed on the voter rolls. So when they calculate turnout, they look at, okay, who's actually registered and then who didn't show up. So it wasn't a very accurate, calculation, because they were still including them in the overall turnout, even though they weren't there.
Got it. Are they supposed to do that? I mean, how do they reconcile that? Where,
yeah.
I mean, I guess they're not part of the, I know that there is an interstate system, where different states can basically check each other's voter rolls. I don't know, I guess
right.
Maybe not, and not all states are a part of that. So some cases in here where that wasn't activated. But is that something that the city commissioner's office is working on so we can avoid it in the next election cycle?
Absolutely. It's actually really a state level issue. When we look at a lot of what's called voter roll maintenance, it's there are federal laws, but really the federal law isn't specific enough. So what ends up happening is that states have to determine how they maintain voter rolls. And unfortunately, in Pennsylvania, we're one of the states where the onus to update your registration profile kind of falls on the voter themselves. So if you don't tell your county election officials, I no longer live here, I just moved here, there's really no way for them to know right now. And unfortunately, from what I've gathered through speaking to experts at Good Government Orgs, Pennsylvania is not a part of that interstate program. And so that's why we kind of see year after year, even in a non-pandemic year, the 27th ward always gets that low turnout number reported, even though it's all these inflated student registration rolls that's kind of impacting that number. It's not very accurate. It's a very there are a lot of super voters in those different segments of that ward, so it's not reflective of the community there.
Yeah, that's the cross-check program, the interstate cross-check program. So Pennsylvania is not a member of that right now?
That's my understanding. I spoke to the executive director at Common Cause Pennsylvania, and they do a lot of Good Government work, and he was saying that in Pennsylvania, it's really up to the voter to tell their county election official that they are no longer there, and that's why we continue to see this problem. I think what's interesting is that there's also kind of like the other side of it. So when we think about the history of voter maintenance, it was used in a lot of ways to disenfranchise the black vote. So black people would show up to the poll and they'd be like, you're not on the roll, and they were purged. And so there were some protections put in place to ensure that that wasn't going to happen. But now we're having kind of this inverse effect where it's inflated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And there are problems. I mean, I should also note, while we're having this conversation, there are problems with the interstate cross-check program. First of all, that date back to its creator, who's actually the vice chairman or was the vice chairman of of President Trump's Election Integrity Commission, Chris Kobach, out of Kansas, and he ran for Senate. He had a failed Senate bid in Kansas, former Secretary of State out of Kansas. But Chris Kobach, he had been pushing this interstate cross-check system as a way to fight voter fraud that really isn't there. So, and that's where this conversation starts getting a bit thorny or tricky, because you'll have certain interests out there. They'll take advantage of it and they'll say, see, that's voter fraud. That's actually not voter fraud. That's not voter fraud at all. That's simply, that signifies, or it signals that there are glitches in the administrative process here. And so, but it is something that definitely has to be cleaned up, but it's not creating a situation where there's fraud. Or I don't know, I mean, what did that phrase or did that term come up in those conversations you were having about trying to determine what was happening there? I'm just curious about that, what was happening in
terms of voter fraud.
Yeah, were people like worried about that, or did that become an issue?
I don't think that was the issue. It really just seemed like, I mean, when I was talking to Penn students, this Penn student who actually runs one of their political organizations on campus, and he was saying really what the main problem was is that there's such a high turnover of, like, specifically the student population. Of course, there are students who end up, staying in Philly after they graduate, but there are also a substantial amount who end up leaving after they graduate. But he said there are some people who've been like on the voter roll since like the 90s and they've just like haven't been taken off. And that's a problem.
That is a problem. That's something we got to fix. What was the other ward? So you got Ward 27.
Right.
And then
so the second lowest turnout was Ward 7 in North Philadelphia. And essentially, I talked to Council Member Sanchez there, whose district oversees that ward, majority Black and Latino ward, and she was just saying, generally, the Democratic Party has really just not made her constituents a priority. She says they've used COVID-19 as the excuse this year, but that has generally been the way her constituents have been treated by the party throughout the years, and she really just didn't see anything different. No one was really working to engage her constituents, and so they weren't energized to vote. She said the Biden campaign came there maybe 30 days before Election Day to finally do some door-to-door outreach. She said the vast majority of outreach was virtual. You can't do that in a community where the strongest voting bloc is elderly, when the strongest voting bloc might not speak English and is struggling with literacy, is struggling with poverty. That's not going to work, and it's quite frankly unacceptable.
Yeah. There were some other barriers too that you like. Okay, so we had kind of identified what the situation was like in Ward 27. Were there other barriers? And so we had low engagement from the Democratic Party. So it's an overwhelmingly Democratic city. But Councilwoman Sanchez feeling like, okay, Democratic Party really doesn't care about my constituents or voters in my district. Were there other barriers? Were there other sorts of barriers in terms of the voting machines, barriers in terms of people getting, people feeling like in these wards, people feeling as if, the registration process wasn't that accessible? There were problems with mail ballot. Did we find other barriers or other problems?
Absolutely. So, of course, the language and literacy barrier was one of the biggest ones, coupled with that lack of engagement that I just talked about. There was also, she said, the issue of voter education. She says that she wishes that was prioritized more within the community. In the beginning, she said there was a lot of excitement around this expansion of mail-in voting within that ward, and there was sort of an uptick in people applying for mail-in. But she said slowly, as that Trump rhetoric started to spread about the fraudulentness of mail-in voting, people started to get scared. And what was happening is people then decided, okay, well, I'm not going to vote by mail. I'm going to come in person. But they didn't know that if they had already requested a mail-in ballot, they needed to come to the polling place with it to kind of, get rid of the mail-in ballot and cast their vote, on the traditional machine or cast their vote provisionally. There was a lot of confusion about all those different steps, as you can imagine, because it's not made very clear, and we don't really have a history of accessible elections here in Pennsylvania. And so she was saying that, coupled with everything else, and then just COVID-19, did not make for great voter turnout.
Yeah. I wonder why, I think that voter education, okay, so yeah, literacy and language, and you and I have talked about this before, and then especially you were kind of prompted into some further reporting, some more action by one of our listeners who calls us all the time about literacy, and I love when he does that, and I want to encourage him, if he's listening in right now, please feel free to continue to ring that alarm bell, because city officials are just not taking the literacy issue, the literacy problem, the literacy epidemic. They're not taking it seriously. Just no signs that they're taking it seriously. But voter education is also key. And, I wonder, and maybe this is for future reporting, Sojourner.
Right.
I don't know if this is the city council can do this, the mayor, whether city activists, really sort of prompting or forcing the school district, the schools to play a role in this. I think voter education should start in elementary school. And obviously that's not the case. I mean, so by the time you get to, obviously I think that there's a role that parents and households have to play, but a lot of households are either not equipped or they're low information themselves. We can only expect so much. You can't, just because my household was a certain way, and yes, in my household when I was growing up, there was a heavy emphasis on civic duty, on voting. It was a rite of passage. It just was. It was just like, hey, I had a grandmother, had family that grew up in the segregated South. They had bitterly fought and bled for those rights to vote, and they moved up north, and they're like, they weren't going to let that go, right? And so all the kids were raised to do that. And I know not all households are like that. I get it. But the school system really should be playing a role here. And I wonder if that question has been asked. What sort of mandatory civics curriculum do you have in place? If you're going to have voting machines in schools, once schools do reopen, or things of that sort, you're going to use school facilities. Young people who go to those schools should know what those are being used for. And even when I was in Philly public schools, back when I was in, this was years ago, this was decades ago, they were not telling it. They were just saying, voting time's coming up and they're going to bring in these special machines. No effort made whatsoever by any principals, teachers, administrators, or whomever at that time to explain to the children or figure out interactive ways to get the kids involved to say, hey, this is what these do. Hey, maybe we can do kind of a some sort of visual presentation or have a session, an interactive session where we showed you guys how this works. No one did that. No one ever thought that this would be an important thing to show young people. And I wonder if there's some value in some future reporting on that.
Absolutely. I think that's really the missing piece, because what ends up happening is that county election officials are then left to educate the whole public. And at that point, when you're at voting age, that's way too late. You need to be aware of how to do these things before you're being made to do it. And there absolutely needs to be a practice of it within schools. Yeah.
And to me, it's amazing that public officials, elected officials, school administrators, that the community at large has not figured this out on their own. It's not even, to me, it's a no-brainer. It really is a no-brainer. It's just one of those things that's just it's an easily identifiable problem with an easy fix, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't understand, and so, people just perpetually, and I feel like we're going to be here 20, 30 years from now still complaining about low voter turnout in Philadelphia. I hope it's not like that 20, 30 years from now. But if you're not fixing this issue at its core, at the root, you're never going to fix it. What's coming up next? What else do you like? Well, I don't know. I may have given you a topic, Sojourner. I would love for you to look into that. Just voter education. Whether or not voter education, if the school system can play a role, if voter education in the city can start as early as like kindergarten, first grade, right?
Absolutely.
So I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a topic, but I was wondering, what are you thinking about or chewing on as we start heading into the new year? I got you for another minute.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think it's funny that you mentioned that, because we were actually thinking of doing kind of a deep dive profile into the infrastructure of the city commissioner's office, and I think that's absolutely a component that we can maybe tease out from them to see, like, okay, is there any outreach you do with schools throughout the year? Because what's interesting about the city commissioner's office is that we only really talk about them during election cycles, but they're doing their jobs all year round. Even in between election cycles. So it'd be interesting to hear if they actually are planning on having some kind of educational, like K-12 program for city schools, if that's something that's on the books. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Sojourner Ahebe is Vote Beat reporter for WURD. Go to @Sojourner Ahebe on social media, on Twitter. She joins us here every week on Reality Check. Sojourner, thanks for your time. Really appreciate this, and happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays.
All right, take care. Okay, let's take a break. Phone lines are open, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Speaking of Woody, I think he's on hold, so we'll take him right after this.
I'm Councilman Alan Dom, and as the holidays approach, we've all heard the news. A vaccine for COVID-19 is coming. However, now is not the time to let our guard down. As COVID-19 continues to spread, keep wearing your mask, practice social distancing, avoid large get-togethers. It will take time before we all get vaccinated. Until then, keep yourself, your family, and community safe. We will get through this pandemic together. Stay safe, stop the spread.
Listen to Laborers Live.
We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
The people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, trying to work people more than 8 hours without overtime, trying to work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staten Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staten, Executive Director of LESIT.
Monday through Thursday, keep it locked to WURD Radio. At 6 a.m., start your day with the Power Hour, hosted by Bishop Dwayne Royster and Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler. At 7, it's Wake Up with WURD with Solomon Jones. At 10 a.m., it's Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Then at 1 p.m., it's The Source, hosted by Andrea Lawful Sanders on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and the Black Women's Leadership Council on Wednesdays. At 4 p.m., it's Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Then at 7, it's Save Space with Sincerely Sarita. At 9 p.m., round up your day with Keeping It Real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Keep your dial locked to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app. Or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Let me bring on Woody out of Winfield, who's been waiting patiently for a Reality Check. Mr. Woody, how are you doing, sir?
Hey, Charles, how you doing, man?
All right, good.
Thanks for bringing that information up because I don't hear it from anybody else. So last time I talked with Sojourner, I did get a chance to talk with her. I was trying to get on to ask her to follow up on the question that I asked the last time about why they changed the straight ticket issue because of all of these non-readers. Now, you have all this data that shows the illiteracy and in the city and also throughout the country, particularly in inner cities. Like you said, it's going to go around in circles. You feel that because they've been trained to do that. See, as I shared with you before, most people who have formal education, be it black or white, have a white male supremacist ideology. And that is why it keeps going around in circles. It's because of the education you received. Now, somebody from the outside has to do something because they're an uneducated person, formally, to do this because they're not going to see it. They can't help it. They're doing the same thing over and over again. My thought about this is when a person graduates high school that didn't get the proper first grade to fifth grade education, they're going to fail because the foundation never was put in place. But you and I know they've been pushing these kids on to get the money for the school system throughout these years. Now, when you graduate with a diploma as a receipt for educational services never truly rendered, that is a crime. Okay? Who's to be punished? You commit a crime and see, don't you get punished? But when the system creates a crime, who is to be punished? I have to tell my kids and just say, my country, 'tis of thee. What has she done to me, the children of the former chattel slaves living in America today? That's why we need that office, as I was sharing with you. They got one for the LGBT, they got one for the immigrants, but not for the non-immigrants, children of former chattel slaves. I'm working hard with what I can do right here at the barbershop, but I'm telling you, people need to be educated because they're ignorant and they're trained with the white male supremacist ideology not to see it. So you got to say something. We got bunches of people that are handicapped because they can't read, write, count, or spell. So how do you expect them to vote? How do you expect them to fill out applications? You got this whole thing about this the money they're sending you. They say, well, you can't make over $86,000. How many of us make that kind of money in the hood? And the hood won't be there much longer, Charles. You won't even be able to talk about it. They're gentrifying people out of their neighborhoods, man. They're calling you up in the middle of the night. You want to sell your house? You want to sell your house? Some people even told me they got sick. These people are putting pest control stuff up on your roof, and these people are trying to get the elders out. A lot of people got sick on the block. I'm telling you, they want you out of this neighborhood. That might sound a little over the hill, but when it comes to money, this system, America, is made of capitalism, and that's all I'm going to say, not humanism.
No, it's not at all, not at all. And that explains our inability to manage and get out of this pandemic. No, you're absolutely right. The other thing too, it's partly, there's just crimes all across, systematic crimes all across the board, Mr. Woody.
It's part of the deal, man.
One in terms of the literacy problem. First is with the school system, the disrepair, the dysfunction, the total failure of the school system to educate the public, to educate children. So there's that. There's also, we have to take into consideration like the role of neurological disorders that have been triggered by pollution, by things like bad air quality, polluted water, by lead, things that create neurological disorders like dyslexia. Dyslexia is also something we haven't talked about that can also prompt literacy, people illiteracy, that can trigger that. And see, we haven't talked about that, particularly when we talk about high lead content, lead poisoning in old houses and old paint, water, school buildings. That can also aggravate the problem, too.
Yeah. Well, one last thing I'll say, Charles, if I can, and that's it. Keep this in mind. Nobody says these words. Systemic educational discrimination in inner cities all over the country. We need to attack that issue.
We do.
And stick to that. And the rest will straighten itself out. Thanks, Charles.
That's right. No, thank you. I appreciate you. Let me go to Mary out of North Philly, calling in for a reality check.
Yes, thank you. Regarding the election, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to speak with Mr. Garner. What we did here in North Philadelphia is we started a program about 6 weeks before the election where we got men from the recovery house, up to 10 men, and we were able to get posters because we were very concerned. We were seeing nothing indicating there was even going to be an election. So we were able to get posters from the IBEW. I just went to all of these places trying to get posters. And many of the posters you see in North Philadelphia, we put up about 6,000 posters. Now, they were coming behind us from the Republican Party, taking them down, but we put them back up.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm saying is that individuals in the community, we have a lot of so-called educated individuals. When we see that something's not taking place that's vital to the well-being of our people and our communities, up to us not just to talk about it, but rather to personally take an interest and do something about it. We have much more power than we can ever imagine.
That's
so
right.
We were able to put up at least 6,000 posters, and I made up flyers myself. We hand out flyers. People were so excited to see something right here, Cecil B. Moore and Montgomery Avenue and 25th and that whole area. There was nothing, and so by the end of the election, you saw. By the time of the election, even though they were taking them down, you still saw the posters and et cetera, all the way over Broad Street, from about 29th over to Broad Street, and then we went up to City Avenue. Wow. And I think that individuals, and we weren't making any money. Friends gave me donations, but we did it because we knew that we had to win this election.
Yeah.
So
thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that, Ms. Marion. Thank you for that work. And honestly, thank you for that service. Yeah. That was very critical and very key. I mean, it's just efforts like those which made Philadelphia, pretty much Philadelphia voters saved the world about a month ago. So we did. I mean, it's just to sort of summarize it. But thank you for that. Thanks for sharing that, Ms. Mary. I gotta let you go. Let me go on to. I want to make sure I bring on these other listeners as well, folks who are calling in. That's very special. I like to hear stories like that. Let me go to Ms. Madeline out of Overbrook, who's calling in for a reality check. Ms. Madeline?
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Miss Mary, I thank you, too. I thank you all the time. You and that other Mary, who brings outstanding information. Let me go to where I need to go this morning. And, Woody, I need to talk to you. I do believe that no matter who we get in there, if they get the right programs, they're going to get rid of them. They lied. They got rid of our good doctor here, didn't they? They lied on her. They kicked her out. And what did she have? She had set up, when she came in, a parenting institute. Let me tell you, sir, that woman had everything our children need to get back on track. Because we had been on track back in the day. They took us off track because they're afraid black people, when they start and get into learning, they don't stop. And they get better and better. And they get better and better in sports and everything else. And they know it. They don't want it. And so, therefore, they put us in positions where when Hyde comes in, he cut out everything that was awesome in Philadelphia. Just took it away. Mm-hmm. And so, let me say, if all of us understood that if we got our own Board of Education, our own board, not who the mayor appoints, not who the governor appoints, but who we vote for in Philadelphia. We the only county in the whole state. And they started the state off like that. And then they told the black people to come to Philadelphia. Okay? And that way they had it made. And it worked somewhat. But then we started moving out and we started sending our kids to Masterman. Because if we were reading them at home and all that, so that when my grandchildren are coming along and they're doing their children, they told them, you don't need to teach them to read. You don't need to teach them their numbers. That's our job. Yeah. And they didn't do it. And so can it start in kindergarten? I believe so, because most people who have families sit at the table for breakfast, lunch, dinner when the children are little, but even not. They start talking about what's going on in the world. So the baby even starts hearing stuff. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
And that gets the family on the track for learning. The family learns. I started a Facebook this year because my church was on Facebook. I never did Facebook before. Mm-hmm. Well, about 2,000 people joined me. We were doing pretty good. Then they started saying the password isn't right, and this isn't right, and that isn't right. And to the point where I'm not doing Facebook. Everything is
you're not missing anything, Ms. Madeline. Yeah, in fact, I highly recommend staying off You have a much better life staying off of Facebook. But I gotta let you go because I want to take in one more caller, Jacob out of Alney, who's calling in for a reality check. Mr. Jacob, how are you doing, sir?
Hey, peace be unto you, Brother Ellison. How you doing this morning?
Peace. All right, hanging in there.
You know, I'm glad that you was talking. That interview was excellent too, because that gives us a diagnosis of where we have to, train the effort to educate the people about the voting and everything. So that's like a diagnosis. So that's good. We know the trouble areas. But you were speaking about black people being targeted with misinformation, right? Conspiracy theories. Mm-hmm. Putin and Russia, not only do they have the more than 70 million people who follow 45, believing in QAnon craziness, right? Because, see, they know a house divided ain't going to stand. See, they already know that. So without even firing missiles and bombs, man, it's strange. The human being is a strange creature. To get animals to go out of their natural nature that the Creator put them in, you have to beat them or do something unnatural to make them do things, right? With a human being, all you got to do is whisper to them in their ear, and they'll follow you to hell. And that's what we see happening. But the majority, that's what I love about it. The majority stood up and did something, and thank that sister, because I did see them signs all over the place, because we needed to be reminded that this was something real big, and that if we don't partake, we could have had 4 more years of this nut, this madman that's in, this Caligula-minded person that's in the White House now. And I'm going to leave with this. You remember when they was giving out Obama phones, Brother Ellison? You remember that? Yeah. They lined up everybody. I was saying, well, what is going on? I keep seeing these lines and little tents. And they told me, they said, well, they giving out phones to people, right? Now, not only was they giving a phone, they was giving a chip and a number, right? And the number they had to put in their forehead because they had to remember the phone number, right? I didn't hear none of that conspiracy stuff about that. You worried about a chip going through a needle to get a vaccination, but they gave you a chip and a number, and you accepted that with glee. Boy, I pray for everybody to just wake up, and when you wake up, and stay woke. Thank you, brother. Everybody have a blessed, this your holiday period, Kwanzaa coming. Just keep this spirit of peace, joy, and how does it say, love for all mankind or something like that. I like that about this. But, let's just start recognizing, man, that with loving a lot of different things, loving it, man, we're going to get some work done, and we're going to make this place a better place, as the Pointer Sister said. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you, Brother Jacob. I appreciate you. Also, don't forget about our Buy Black virtual holiday marketplace, wordradio.com/marketplace, wordworks.com/marketplace. You've got about a little bit less than a day to go to get your special holiday gift today, and you can get it from a black business that is a part of our marketplace, of our WURD Radio virtual holiday marketplace. So go to wordradio.com/marketplace, wordworks.com/marketplace too. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back on the other side in the 11 o'clock hour, we're going to be talking with Sam Ricketts. He's co-founder, senior policy advisor at Evergreen Action, going into an EcoWord segment. We're going to talk about environmental provisions in the pandemic relief bill. Yes, there was some climate crisis provisions in the pandemic relief bill, and so he'll talk about that and why that's important, why that was inserted in this particular bill, which is still in doubt at the moment, but we'll look into it. We'll explore it a little bit more in an EcoWord segment coming up next here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Family caregiving can be rewarding and challenging. Family and friends are the backbones of America's care system for older Americans and loved ones to live at home. African American family caregivers care for a loved one for an average of 5 years and help with medical and nursing tasks for over 30 hours a week. But now, caregiving may be harder than ever. AARP has information and online communities of other caregivers. Learn more at aarp.org/caregiving.
Have you thought about your Christmas Day or New Year's Day dinner? Contact Eatable Delights Catering for one of their scrumptious packages. Call for the fire roasted chestnut, the Natalie Cole, or the Arizona Special. They can cater for you for as little as 4 people. 215-236-3900 or stop in at 1540 Wadsworth Avenue. Order by December 21st for pickup and order for delivery by December 24th and December 25th. That's 215-236-3900.
This message is from the Philadelphia Department of Public Health. COVID-19 is still a threat in our communities, but we can all do something simple to help stop the spread. It's critically important to wear a mask or face covering whenever you're in public or around others. Yes, even while social distancing. Wearing a mask shows you care for yourself and your community and is essential to slowing the spread of COVID-19. So love yourself, love your neighbors, wear a mask.
Wishing you and yours the very best this holiday season from the entire WURD family. This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app. Progressive and proud.
Independent Black Media. Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Okay, welcome back to Reality Check. We were just trying to get Sam Ricketts on, but we were trying to get him by Skype, but he may join us by phone. But in the meantime, let's just open up the phone lines 2-1 while we're working on having him for our EcoWord segment. And, he is on. We have him on. Sam Ricketts is co-founder and senior policy advisor at Evergreen Action. He joins us by phone. Sam, how are you doing? Good morning.
Great. Good morning. Merry Christmas Eve. Happy holidays.
All right. Excellent. All right. Merry Christmas Eve back at you. Really appreciate that. More information on Evergreen Action is at evergreenaction.com. What is Evergreen Action? Just let our listeners know, Sam.
Yeah. It's a climate advocacy organization that was created by me and a number of my colleagues who are alumni of the Jay Inslee for President campaign in 2019.
Mm-hmm. I remember
Governor
that.
Jay Inslee, Washington State, brought forward a bold vision for the country for defeating the climate crisis, for building a clean energy economy.
He was up and trying.
Some pretty put forward some influential policy and built and built some built a good vision that we his staff wanted to carry on. And I was the policy director for the campaign and remain as a co-founder of this group, which has been I like to think already effective in continuing the cause.
Excellent. All right. And so one of the things you all have been working on, or you did some work on, we don't know where things stand at this moment, and things are a little uncertain on Capitol Hill at the moment about the pandemic relief bill. So tell us about these environmental provisions. I was reading about these as well. I have not read the whole 5,700-page bill. I doubt that you have either, but there were some environmental provisions in the pandemic relief bill. What are those?
Yeah, I mean, first things first about this relief bill and this year in and omnibus legislation. Thank goodness for 11th-hour deadlines. We didn't have them. Federal lawmakers would actually get nothing done. Instead, they just wait till the last minute. Well, the highest level about the bill is obviously people have been hurting. People are unemployed. There are over 300,000 Americans have died. This is unacceptably late, and it's unfortunately too small as far as COVID relief legislation. House Democrats passed a bill back in the spring and another in the summer to get at this, but I would say two people are singularly responsible for having held things up this long and having nickeled and dimed the package into the smaller size that it is, and those are, of course, Mitch McConnell, the Republican Senate Majority Leader, and President Trump, who largely just avoided this topic until just the last couple of days.
Right.
So that's unfortunate, and that's something we should all be dissatisfied with. That said, there are, as you mentioned, really critical provisions in this legislation that functionally amount to the biggest climate bill passed by Congress in over a decade. Really important pieces that I think set that first of all are important policy in themselves. We can get into some of the specifics, but also will help empower President-elect Biden, who's going to take office here in less than 30 days, to hit the ground running with the vision that he has put forward for the country, which is really build a better plan, invest in building the clean energy economy, to drive greater environmental justice, to create good union jobs, and in doing those things, to confront the existential challenge of the climate crisis. So I like to think these things are going to set his administration up for success, even more so. So it's a wonderful surprise, or not surprise. It's a good thing tucked inside a less satisfactory thing that appears to be getting done here at the end of the year, notwithstanding some of the sturm and drag in Washington D.C. with the president's tweets.
Got it. The also, I'm real curious. So let's go into the details of that outline. What those environmental provisions are. I know that there's one provision that is eliminating or banning pollutants that come from air conditioners and refrigerators that are harmful to air quality, harmful to the environment. That also, is one of those many pollutants that create the situation that we're in now with this climate crisis, with the environment, with the with the planet destabilizing the way it is. But talk, if you could outline what those provisions are.
Yeah, certainly. So the biggest and most important is this one you hit upon, which is phasing out HFC, hydrofluorocarbons, by 85% by 2035, which is a policy that the Obama administration has already committed the United States to as part of the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol. Recall the Montreal Protocol a few decades ago with the large-scale global concern around ozone depletion, holes in the ozone layer, caused by chlorofluorocarbons. Well, in response to that, manufacturers, those who produce those materials, increasingly switch to hydrofluorocarbons, which don't have the same ozone-depleting effect. Fortunately, as we've come to understand, have a very, very strong global warming potential. They trap heat many times worse than carbon pollution does in the atmosphere. So what we call a climate super pollutant, not unlike methane, but actually even stronger. And those hydrofluorocarbons are part of manufacturing processes and involved in things like refrigerators and appliances. The global community, recognizing this challenge, struck the Kigali Amendment, which the U.S. was party to, although it has not been ratified by the Senate. And those commitments in the Kigali Amendment would basically require manufacturers to move off of HFCs into alternatives. And with the U.S. fulfilling its commitments with this phase out that's going to be catalyzed by this legislation, along with the global community, we could avoid a full half a degree of planetary warming by the end of the century, which is just enormous, which is an enormous step for global justice, for avoiding the worst impacts of this crisis. The other thing about it that's particularly unique and good is that it has received support from workers and industries here in the United States, because domestic industries, manufacturers in the U.S. have already largely been shifting to non-HFC alternatives, which means that they have taken steps ahead of our global competitors to get cleaner, to use more environmentally friendly topics. Therefore, with passage of this legislation, we're going to catalyze not only that crucial environmental protection, but also give a leg up in international economic competitiveness for domestic manufacturers, which is, so that probably explains why I was able to get through. You had a good bipartisan coalition with strong backing from both environmentalists as well as from industry and workers to get this thing over the finish line. So that's the biggest ticket item, but there's a bunch more.
Yeah. Let me ask too, Sam, before you get into some of those others, and I'm all for it. I'm all for sort of any effort to push environmental advocacy, to protect the environment, to also figure out ways to reduce the impact of climate crisis. But I mean, people are going to wonder, what does this have to do with pandemic relief? There's been a lot of questions around different provisions, not the environmental provisions, but provisions that people have found, like a tax for racehorses. I mean, that's one provision that's in there. There was also some controversy over millions of dollars being spent for a missile defense system in Israel. So, people may look at this, they, definitely I see the value in it, but other people may say, what does this have to do with immediate pandemic relief? Why insert these sorts of issues into this kind of bill?
Yeah, certainly. Well, no, it's a good question. I think the first and most important thing to understand is this bill wasn't just pandemic relief, it was also government funding. So it was sort of it combined the two big things Congress had to do this year, and it got them done on, Christmas Eve, which is to say it's slightly bigger than simply the relief. As we mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, the COVID relief was frankly too small. It should be much bigger. It came in at about $900 billion. House Democrats passed legislation of multi-trillion dollars earlier in the summer, and unfortunately things are getting worse, not better. So that's going to require course correction, and frankly it's going to require the Republican Senate majority to actually be willing to step up for American people, not just their donors or tax breaks for racehorses, like you mentioned. But with that said, because it's these two, it's the smorgasbord of legislation, it's basically all the things that Congress needs to get done at the end of the year. And that's always a Christmas tree of things, if you can excuse the metaphor, the timely metaphor. That's always a bunch of things all passed together at the end of the year that regularly happens. I would say, though, more specifically to your question about how does these clean energy provisions, how do these climate progress points relate to the crisis we're in currently? I think that we have a fundamental opportunity, beginning particularly with the election of President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, to launch a more just and inclusive and frankly a better economy through our economic recovery efforts that is going to simultaneously create good jobs, confront the problems that we're facing with this public health pandemic, as well as with so many millions out of work because of it, and put ourselves on a path where we're building a more sustainable economy that has got better economic opportunity and is eliminating the greenhouse gas pollution and the environmental harms like water pollution that are harming communities today and are going to be continuing to do so at a greater pace because of climate change. So I think these things are inextricably linked. President-elect Biden has talked about sort of the 4 crises the country is facing right now, both in terms of the pandemic, the economic crisis related to it, the crisis of racial injustice, frankly, systemic racism in the country, and the climate crisis. And if you want to throw a fifth on there, obviously we've had certain parties targeting our democracy, which is potentially a fifth crisis to engage. But those are all dire. Those are all extremely problematic. Those are all crises facing the country.
Yeah.
The opportunity herein, which federal lawmakers are just scratching at now with this bill, but we can realize in full starting on January 20th. I like to think.
Do you think
that we can build back better?
Let me ask you too. Because is this one of the reasons these environmental provisions? Because you're dealing with a current president, lame duck president, who is very anti-environment. So, do you think this is one of the reasons why he suddenly rejected this bill? It's not about the $2,000 stimulus payment, because he said there were other provisions that he was unhappy with, that he felt that had nothing to do with pandemic. And so, he's actively anti-environment. He's been so his entire presidency. So do you think that that's what this is about, that, once that maybe there's another effort, or do you know of another effort to remove these provisions, these environmentally friendly, ecologically friendly provisions, to get this bill passed? And if that's the case, should you just wait till January, February, when the new president takes seat?
Yeah, it's a good question. To guess at what goes on in President Trump's mind is a talent beyond mine. I don't think these are the things that he's targeting in this bill. It seems to me like it's not a terribly substantive area of opposition that he's coming up with. He's claiming now that he wants bigger checks for American people. Well, where was he in these negotiations as his Republicans on the Hill were fighting for smaller and smaller checks? I think what this is out of the president is a last-minute temper tantrum. He's got a few more weeks here where the eyes of the American public, unfortunately, have to continue to focus upon him because he's still president, and he's going to use that to get all the attention that he can. And I think he's, again, just a tantrum, not unlike my 3-year-old might do, for the same purpose. If he does veto this legislation, unacceptable is the short answer. But even unacceptable for anyone who would support him in so doing, including Republican senators.
Do you think that,
or go too small?
And in terms of Republican senators or Republicans who you're characterizing as supporting these rather generous environmental protections, is this really them having a turnabout on climate issues and bucking the president? Or maybe they just didn't read that entire 5,600-page bill and they don't even know that those provisions are in there. Is this truly a case of conservatives? I'm having trouble kind of seeing that is the case.
How it comes together. One can hope. One can hope is what I'd say is the first part. But the short answer is I would say, unfortunately, no. A couple different things. Number one, kudos to Democratic negotiators for prioritizing many of these things in the bill, like clean energy tax incentives that we know Donald Trump doesn't like and has already tried to. He threatened to veto a bill a year ago that contained clean energy tax incentives. So, your earlier question could be not far off the mark. Kudos to Democratic leadership and particularly House Energy Committee, Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, and Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, and Schumer and Pelosi's offices for really pushing on these provisions. That's going to be necessary, particularly if Mitch McConnell remains majority leader in the Senate next year, which is prioritizing these clean energy investments as part of any negotiations over legislation, which is the first thing. But the second thing is there was opportunity here, and there was meaningful bipartisanship in here that did get this bill over the finish line. Credit to Lisa Murkowski of Alaska for really wanting to get this bill over the line. Same with Joe Manchin of West Virginia, a Democrat who prides himself on bipartisanship. There were meaningful provisions in this bill that attracted bipartisan support, both in terms of the HST's provisions we mentioned, but also in terms of greater investment and greater authorization for DOE clean energy and climate innovation programs, more investment in figuring out the next generation of clean energy technology, as well as some of the other technologies we're going to need to defeat the climate crisis, like getting carbon out of the atmosphere. So there is. I'd like to take the optimistic tone here, which is there could be a real opportunity. for bipartisan collaboration in the new year, led by President-elect Biden with his ambitious agenda for climate, that there could be a meaningful ability to work across the aisle and pass recovery legislation, because more is going to be needed, to pass infrastructure legislation, because we need that too, and for a long and obviously just to continue to fund the federal government and invest in American clean energy economy.
We've been talking with Sam Ricketts, co-founder, senior policy advisor at Evergreen Action. Go to evergreenaction.com for more information, at Evergreen Action, also at Sam T. Ricketts on social media, on Twitter more specifically. He's been joining us here on Reality Check, talking about, for an EcoWord session here on Reality Check, talking about environmental provisions and the latest pandemic relief bill and kind of what the future of climate policy looks like as we head into a new administration. Hoping everything goes as smooth as it can possibly go between now and January 20th. Sam, appreciate your time. We'll have you back on. Hopefully we'll see you in the new year.
Yes, likewise. Happy holidays. Pleasure talking with you.
All right.
Your listeners enjoy some time off after this dismal year. Thank you.
I hear you. Happy holidays. Be safe out there. Thanks so much. All right, let's take a quick break here on Reality Check, and we're going to open up the phone lines at 215-634-8065, toll-free 866-361-0900, 215-634-8065, toll-free 866-361-0900. Phone lines are open. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
Did you know you can catch the flu and COVID-19 at the same time, or even back-to-back? Don't risk catching the flu during the COVID-19 pandemic. The flu shot is a safe and effective way of reducing your chances of catching the flu or spreading it to others. And the flu shot helps protect you and your community from the worst effects of the flu. Don't say, I should have got my flu shot. Call your doctor or visit your pharmacist and get your flu shot today.
Last year, the Pennsylvania Lottery contributed over $1.2 billion to programs that benefit older Pennsylvanians. Programs like senior centers and hot meals, long-term living services and home care, property tax and rent rebates, transit rides, and much more. To learn more, visit PALottery.com and check out the interactive map to see how the Pennsylvania Lottery benefits older residents in your county. Players must be 18 or older. Please play responsibly.
This is not a fad for us. We will not resume our regular programming when things die down. We're not black to help our bottom line or because it's politically correct. We're not joining a fight. This has been our fight, our message, our people. Black lives have always mattered here. We are undeniably, indefatigably, unapologetically, permanently Black Talk Media. WURD. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
Yeah, the phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, toll-free 866-361-0900, 215-634-8065, toll-free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Some of those things, some of those provisions that are included in that second stimulus package and that pandemic relief bill that right now at the moment is hanging in doubt. But it's not just a stimulus deal, it's also funding for the government through September. So President Trump, he went ahead, threw a wrench in it and went to Mar-a-Lago, to his resort Mar-a-Lago in Florida. Just basically put a big middle finger up to everyone in Washington. But obviously we've been talking about the individual payments. Congress came to a compromise with $600. If it had been up to Republicans, we should always stress that. If it had been up to Republicans, we wouldn't have gotten anything at all. We'd have gotten zero. So this is not about Congress. It's about Republicans. So now, and that's fact. That's a statement of fact. That's not like a partisan statement. Really, it's not. But they came down to a compromise with a very low, very inadequate $600. People obviously were outraged about that. President Trump calling himself, after not being vocal during these negotiations at all, and probably pouting on the sidelines, feeling like, he was being made irrelevant. He injected himself, said, hey, let's do $2,000 payments. I mean, on principle, what's wrong with $2,000 payments? Let's go ahead, let's do it. But individual payments is in there. Also, expiration, a provision dealing with the expiration of unemployment benefits That is happening in a couple of days. You're going to have 12 million Americans will lose federal unemployment assistance in 2 days on December 26th, day after Christmas. So multiple programs were extended in this pandemic relief bill, and not like it, it's not the same kind of federal unemployment assistance that folks were getting with the CARES Act that was passed in the spring. So the new benefit or new enhanced federal jobless benefits, or the extension of jobless benefits, will be $300 per week for 11 weeks. That will be $1,200 for 11 weeks. Before it was $600 per week, right? $600 per week, $2,400 for 11 weeks. So, so this new benefits half the amount that was provided by the CARES Act, which was passed in the spring. Legislation is also extending pandemic unemployment assistance. So that's pandemic unemployment, or PUA. That's unemployment assistance extended to freelancers and independent contractors. That's extended for the gig economy. That would be 11 weeks also, and that's providing $100 per week for folks in the gig economy. But those who apply for the benefit have to provide proof of unemployment, and the applications are a bit complicated for that. Also, targeted aid for small businesses, in this package, $285 billion set aside for additional loans under the Paycheck Protection Program. So this is just essentially renewing the PPP that was under the CARES Act, which was passed in the spring. Also, the new legislation is going to cap loans at $2 million. Loans will be capped at $2 million, and these loans will be made available only to borrowers with fewer than 300 employees that experienced at least a 25% drop in sales from a year earlier in at least one quarter. Also, there's about $12 billion that's been set aside specifically for minority-owned businesses. It doesn't say black-owned, it says minority-owned businesses. So publicly traded companies will be ineligible to apply for those loans. There's another $15 billion supporting entertainment-related businesses, including small theaters and live music venues, which have been shuttered for most of the year, so they kind of keep them afloat until the pandemic starts. Let me go to Jay out of West Philly, who's calling in for a reality check. Jay?
God bless, Brother Charles. How you making out, family?
All right. What's happening? Bless.
Give God the glory as always. I pray everyone and everything as well. You know that. And God bless Brother Troy on the boards, the whole WURD family. As always, God bless all the victims. Our hearts, thoughts, and prayers are with them. Everyone incarcerated, especially those incarcerated falsely. Everyone in sufferation. May we do our best to make it better and get it together. As always. And as always, I encourage everybody, please, everybody help somebody. Don't nobody hurt nobody. Don't nobody harm nobody. If we want to have a holiday, how about we have a Don't Nobody Harm Nobody Day? Yeah. Can we get that accomplished?
That's right.
You know what I mean? Brother Charles, I got one question and two comments real quick, please. First question, I've been meaning to call you ever since the elections, just different things going on. I couldn't get, I ain't had, you know how that go. But long story short, when they showed the election projection maps, and they had the states with the red and blue lines, I think Nebraska was one, and Maine was another one. What did that mean? I've been asking people, but I ain't never get a straight answer.
Oh, those are they provide electors by congressional district. So, like, there are 2 congressional districts, I think, within Nebraska, for example. I think the same applies to Maine, but that's how they allot or provide their. I know it sounds complex, but that's what it pretty much boils down to.
Okay, I see what you're saying. That like they can send their electoral college votes to both Trump and Biden.
Yeah, they could. Yeah, that's conceivable. I don't know when they started doing that, but it's called the congressional district method.
But there's also the rhythm method.
You said the rhythm method?
Yeah, you remember that?
No.
As a matter of contraception?
Oh, the rhythm. Okay, right.
All right. The two comments real quick.
Yeah. They have other names for it, but I hear you. Right.
Yeah, abstinence. No, Brother Charles, I ain't going to get on a soapbox, but
right.
It's a shame how we celebrate our own debauchery and have moved away from inspiring morality, which leads to integrity and dignity. I'm going to get on that later, though. We could talk about that. I mean, I hope people talk about that all the time, because that's the key. We want to get through to the youth and help raise them right. We got to reinstill the character that we used to have. I remember when I was coming up during the hip-hop days, a popular phrase was, ain't no shame in the game. And I think that's destroyed us.
Yeah.
You know, but that's my own soapbox. But the two comments real quick. One, for the brother Abdul that called in earlier, I'm with him on that. We are deliberately distracted for our own demise to help make us complicit in our own destruction. We can go into that later. But as far as herb is concerned, Bob Marley smoked a whole lot of herb, and he had the talent. God blessed him.
Yeah.
The ability to hit nail on the head.
Yeah, he did.
You know what I'm saying? So I can't knock the herb. Some of the herbs that they're giving to the youth now, I would say, is created chemically to keep us froggy.
The synthetics, yeah.
But you get some good herb out the ground, have you on point, man. Plus their therapeutic benefits.
Hey, Brother Jay, I got to let you go because I got a bunch of calls after you here. But I appreciate a lot of what you were just saying. But thanks so much for calling. And I got to let you go because I want to take Renee out of West Philly. And thanks for that earlier question about Maine and Nebraska. I'm sorry, it's I had it flipped, in terms of that split. But this it's 2 electoral votes in Maine and 3 in Nebraska, and they're split by they provide them by congressional district. Let me go to Renee out of West Philly. But thanks for that question. A lot of people had that question, and I'm glad you asked it so we could clarify it. Renee out of West Oak Lane, calling in for a reality check. Hi, Renee.
Yeah, hello. Good morning, Charles. I just want to speak about the package, the stimulus package, the pandemic relief fund. Most people know that most of our government financial funds come from our taxes, whether it be we pay sugar taxes, taxes from the store, property taxes, or taxes taken out of our paychecks. Now, about the stimulus, about the $600 that's supposed to be distributed to people and the $300 added on to people on unemployment, it's really sad and pitiful because the purpose of it is to help people that's in a dire straight situation, and that money just dissipates and goes back into the system, so it's not like they're really losing any money. So I don't understand why they're being so stingy with that, because that's what it's designed for people to spend it, and so it's for it to go back into the system. And I just wasn't understanding why they being so stingy and tight with that. Just giving people $600. I mean, you got major stores going out of business like Century 21, and our small businesses, black businesses, minority business, white business, whatever. They're closing up stores and stuff like that. So I just want to put that. And
it's a very good point. You're very much correct on that, Renee. Because remember the Great Recession. Like when that started, 2007, 2008, and, federal government, Federal Reserve, everyone, activated quickly, jumped onto the scene. Once it was all said and done, the financial sector received $20+ trillion in economic relief and emergency relief to keep that afloat. So, now this is less than $1 trillion.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's actually not the full $900 billion that's being provided for the unemployment assistance. And here we have a problem. I mean, you're talking about, the American economy is $25 trillion, 25 with a T. There's more than enough money out there to keep folks afloat for 6 months to a year or, for an extended period of time until we get through this pandemic.
Exactly, and it's going right back into the system, what they're dishing out to the people. I mean, I don't understand that. But anyway, Charles, I just want to wish you and your family the WRD stuff a blessed and good Kwanzaa New Year. I just wanted to just relay that out, put that out.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, no, happy holidays back at you. Happy Kwanzaa, happy New Year. Please be blessed, be safe out there to everyone. Thank you for that, too, Renee. I will pass that along to the Ellisons, the Ellison household. And by the way, the Ellisons, we keeping it, we laying low. We're staying right here, right at home. not really going anywhere. We're not having people over. I would highly advise that people do, they kind of follow our lead on that. So just please stay safe and, just stay healthy. Let me go to Sandra out of Oak Lane calling in for a reality check. Miss Sandra, how are you doing? Can you hear me? Miss Sandra?
No.
Hello? Miss Sandra, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Can you
how are
hear
you doing?
me?
Good morning. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Good.
Go ahead.
Happy holidays to you and your family.
Yes.
Okay.
Happy
I have a
holidays. Happy
question.
holidays. Thank you.
Do you think the recent appointment of Dr. Miguel Cardona as Education Secretary would help our frail, the public school system and the high illiteracy among Puerto Ricans in Philadelphia? He is Puerto Rican. He was raised in the public housing in Connecticut, and he's got a little swag when he walks. If that counts for anything. So, what do you think?
They got a lot of swag up there in Connecticut, I'm told. But yeah, go ahead. Oh, you said, what do I think about that?
What do you think? Do you think, because I was thinking about once he gets approved, writing him and asking him to visit the Puerto Rican community because Sanchez, she should do a better job. That's her district. She should really do a better job.
Got it.
Reaching out, as far as the bilingual and, them not knowing how. This is a systemic problem from the 50s with the Puerto Rican community. So it really does need to be addressed. More outreach needs to be done with the Puerto Rican community.
Right. Especially as there's more immigration from Puerto Rico to the mainland. Puerto Rico, by the way, too, it is part of the United States. It is a U.S. territory. A lot of people feel like a lot of people
it's another country.
Yeah, it's not another country, y'all. Just to let folks know. People are convinced that Puerto Rico is another country. It's not. Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States. It's not a state exactly, but it's they pay taxes.
Protectorate.
Exactly. They fight in wars, just like the U.S. Virgin Islands, the same thing. So, but no, I think overall it's a good pick. I mean, there are going to be some questions about. I mean, he is an educator. He's a former educator. There are going to be questions, and he's in his commentary and in his professional life. He's been all about the students, putting the students first, based on what we know. I don't know a whole lot about Cardona, but based on what I know,
he was a public school teacher.
He's a public school teacher, exactly. And this is happening.
School teacher also.
And I think it's a good signal in the sense that, I mean, the majority of public school students are Black, Brown, Indigenous students. I mean, that's becoming a reality. Fewer students in the public school system, fewer and fewer students in the public school system are white. I mean, it's less than half white, the public school system or public schools in the country. But Cardona, I think it seems like a good, solid pick, especially compared to what we've had in an education secretary for the past several years, and Betsy DeVos, who didn't have that kind of extensive educational background. I am concerned. Does he have the skills to run what amounts to a $70 billion bureaucracy? That's the education department. That's 70. What about the student loan issue? There is a big movement to cancel or forgive nearly $2 trillion in student loan debt. I would want to know what his position is on that, because I think that should happen. I really do. I think we're at that moment. We're at a crisis moment that could really break the American economy. Yeah, I mean, I think it's breaking the American economy already, student loans. So I'd like to see where he stands on that, but otherwise I think it's a solid pick. I'm sorry, I gotta let you go, Sandra. Let me take some other calls here. In fact, let me take a break, and George out of Center City, Bobby out of Southwest. Hold on for one moment. I want to take a quick break here on Reality Check. Phone lines are open at 215-634-8065. Toll free, 866-361-0900. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Hi, Philly. I'm City Councilwoman Cindy Bass. As the holidays approach, we've all heard the news. A vaccine for COVID-19 is coming. However, now is not the time to let our guard down. As COVID-19 continues to spread, keep wearing your mask, practice social distancing, and avoid large get-togethers. It'll take time before we all get vaccinated, so until then, keep yourself, your family, and your community safe, and we will get through this pandemic together. Philly, stay safe and stop the spread.
Tune in to onWURD's 2020 in Black podcast series, available now on your favorite podcast app, or visit wordradio.com/2020 in Black. You can also ask your favorite device to play onWURD 2020 in Black. Check us out.
Want to buy black for the holidays? Word Radio has got you covered. WURD is proud to present our virtual holiday marketplace online. Support local, small, black-owned businesses through the marketplace and purchase your holiday gifts today. Visit wordradio.com/marketplace or wordworks.com/marketplace.
Reality check
With Charles Ellison right now on Word Radio
and wordradio.com.
Okay, let's go back to the phone lines. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. George out of Center City calling in for a reality check. George?
Charles, how you doing?
What's happening?
Good. You know, I want to thank you for what you done, all you have done this week. It came out very well. You know, you brought a lot of stuff to the attention of what these elected officials should have been doing that they didn't do. You know, and one could appreciate that. You know, you really held them to be accountable. The next thing that you're going to have to get back to, you should just dedicate your show to one day about this violence.
Yeah.
See, the thing is that you started, you get them their attention, but their attention span is low. They know that you're going to go on to another subject with somebody else, and then it's forgotten.
Right.
You should take a whole 3 hours just on this whole violence piece of Philadelphia, not Washington, not somewhere else, and deal with these people who are all, like yesterday, you had Derek Green come on there and totally disrespect the host, you know.
Well, he wasn't my program. I didn't have Derek Green on. Yeah, Derek Green was probably on something else. Who's that?
No. You know how to check him, and so did they. They checked him real good because I think that was the first time I ever seen Derek Green, his true self. But you know what really got him messed up, Charles, is this Zoom foolishness. They don't have to deal with the public. They don't have to deal with anybody. You call the office, you never get an answer, and you never get a call returned back. The City Hall has been empty for almost a year now. Nobody in their office. They don't have the phones forwarded. After me saying this, they might forward the calls to somebody, but they've been getting paid a year for doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. On Wednesday, they just give out a bunch of shout-outs to each other and all that there, and it's crazy. But you see all the money that the city had to pay out to the insurance companies because of that James Floyd, the Floyd thing, you know, when they purposely intentionally set aside and let people riot and all that there. So I don't blame a lot of these stores for not reopening because all the old stock they took and then they added on to it. The insurance company willingly, openly gave them all what they claimed was, and now the city has to pay those claims because the city is self-insured.
Yeah.
And the police sat by, didn't make no effort. That's what the court said. Made no effort or showed any effort of trying to stop it. So that means the taxpayers is going to have to pay for that, you know. But in this killing, Charles, we almost at 5, you know. And the thing is that they can say what they want. They made a mistake in bringing this police commissioner here. She's not built for the job. She's not ready. But that's right. She's black, so you can't talk about her. We're not supposed to talk about her because a few Negroes was in the room, and they said that's what they wanted, and Kenny honored that. Okay, you want a black female? Okay, I'm going to give you that. What else you want?
Who do you think? I mean, George, you're just sort of well, I don't want to prognosticate. I do have to ask, though, is there someone else who's more capable? Do we have names of people who could be more capable in that position?
Yeah, and the police, and we have quite a few women that are more than capable of handling. But they didn't.
There's people who are already inside the Philadelphia Police Department.
Yep, ones that would have gotten respect, you know. But these, though, a few of them not sleeping around, they can't move up. You know, you got to sleep up to move up. You know, and that's just the way it is. So they wouldn't. You know, it's like this here. Brian Abernathy always wanted to be a cop. He couldn't pass the test to be a cop. So when he became managing director, he was the police's boss. He's the one who ordered all that tear gas and all that other foolishness. He brought somebody in here that he could control. Plain and simple as that. But people don't want to hear that. You know, they want to hear a nice
Let's see. I mean, and who's going to make that decision? I mean, is the mayor going to make? Well, I still want. I've said this before. I want whomever the police commissioner is. I want that person to work. Who makes the decision as to who the police commissioner or the next police commissioner will be?
The mayor.
Is it the mayor or is it the police union chief? Who's making that decision?
When she first came here, she was waiting a whole hour and 45 minutes for her thing at City Hall. You know the first place she went when she got off the plane? She got a direct escort to Caroline Road. She met with McNesby before she met with anybody.
Is McNesby happy with her? Or it sounds like McNesby's not happy with her.
Say it again.
McNesby's not happy with her?
Yeah, he pleased with her. You see the cops getting fired? You see the cops getting rubber banded? Why would he not be pleased with her? That's their gal. As they would say, that's their gal. That girl or woman, that's their gal.
All right.
Okay?
Interesting, yeah.
You don't even see her. Only time you see her is when something really significant happens, like a police incident or something. Other than that, she on pandemic. You know, she stay home or wherever she at. But then when she come out on the scene, she got somebody.
I mean, I have said that. I mean, I think that she could really use a dose of better communications planning. I do feel like that is lacking on her behalf. I think it is a tough year. It's pandemic. The honeymoon is definitely over. So, I mean, whatever it is she's doing, she's either got to be more visible about it, she's got to be more open about it, or she's got to communicate it better. I got to let you go, George, because I got to take on other calls here. But to George's point, we have 482 homicides officially so far in the city of Philadelphia. So we forgot to do that at the top of the at the top of the show, at the top of this Thursday edition. Imagine that, 482. So we are getting closer and closer to 500 homicides in the city of Philadelphia by the end of this year. And already shooting incidents are up 67%. They have increased. They are up 67% compared to this same time last year. There have been over 3,800 shooting incidents in the city of Philadelphia. Shooting victims, those are non-fatal shooting victims, those have increased by 54% compared to last year, 54% over what we saw last year. Last year, by this time, there were 1,415 shooting victims. So far in 2020, there are 2,173 shooting victims in Philadelphia thus far. And so, city council is on break. Everyone's on holiday break. It's just, a lot of folks in Philadelphia are treating it like it's just another Philly day. Hey, this is Philly, or, it's always grim and miserable in Philly. What else is new? And so it's honestly, it's just as the American public largely has become numb to pandemic deaths, that has happened. Philadelphia has become numb to the rising number of homicides in the city. Philadelphia has become numb to that. People may not want to admit that, but that's what I'm sensing. I haven't become numb to it, but a lot of other folks out there, including policymakers, people who are in a position to really do something about this, have become numb to it. And so, because I didn't hear a whole lot about it in the last session of City Council before they went on holiday break. Did you? You didn't hear a whole lot about the rising violence. It's just like, just one of those other issues. I mean, that's a top priority issue. It's very dangerous right now living in Philadelphia. It is very dangerous to live in Philadelphia, to walk around in Philadelphia. If I were the mayor, you're in the middle of a pandemic, so, the city's not making a whole lot of money as is. You need to call a state of emergency, and you need to get a joint task force going. If I were in the mayor's position, and I've seen mayors in critical situations kind of similar to this, do that, just that. This mayor is not exhibiting a whole lot of leadership. He's not exhibiting any leadership at all. And I'm not being, when I say that, I'm not saying that in any sort of hyperbolic way. That's not hyperbole. I'm not the only one saying that. And he has to. He has to. It can't just be, I've got my second term, this is it. exhibit some leadership here, exhibit some urgency on this, and I would highly advise City Council to do that as well. People complain about especially in places like Philadelphia, have been complaining all for the past several years about how uncompassionate and how numb to people's misery President Trump is. Everybody talking about President Trump, this Trump, that. It's like, look at your own selves in the mirror. Look at how you're not responding, or the lack of response, or the total lack of care for the citizens of Philadelphia who are frightened, who are getting hurt, harmed by gunshots, and have had family members either critically maimed or injured or killed by gun violence. I mean, look at yourselves. Forget about Trump for now, because that's been settled. Look at your own damn selves and how you're not responding to this violence in this city. And it's just shameful. Let me go to Bobby out of Southwest, who's calling in for a reality check. Bobby?
I wanted to speak to, you were speaking with the young lady earlier. I think you guys was talking about the voting machines and things of that nature.
Oh, just about who didn't turn out. Like there were 2 wards that did not turn out as much in the 2020 election in Philly. But yes, go ahead. Okay,
this is my thing, is that your children and the children behind your children and other people, the newer generation, as you know, the voting machine is going to become a tanker sitting in a museum. And I'm connecting this with the children that have access to computers, the donations, however it came about. And I think that people need to start teaching them how to think about elections, think about being a representative. Like maybe they should create games that children do on the computer as a teaching lesson, like they vote for each other or something of that. When I was in school, even in elementary, we used to have voting and we ran for, positions in school. So they need somebody. I'm not a tech person, but anyway, someone needs to devise a way to come up where children it can become an automatic process of thought on decision, what the child would expect or as a leader and things of that nature. I think that needs to be introduced early as opposed to waiting until they get in 8th or 9th grade. Maybe they'll learn about it, or maybe they want it to be an automatic thing.
I agree.
I thank you.
Completely agree
Thank you.
I thank you too, Ms. Bobby. Happy holidays to you. Thanks for calling in. Thanks for listening to early on. No, I absolutely agree with you. That education should start early on. Should start kindergarten, 1st grade, carried on throughout elementary, middle, into high school. I also maintain that no one's taken me up on this offer yet. So maybe that's one of those agenda items in 2021. For Philadelphia. Lower the voting age one more time to 16. Lower the voting age one more time to 16. You say you want to get young people involved. You want to get them more civically engaged, participating in these elections. You want them to lead. You want real change in the public school system. Lower that voting age one more time to 16. I bet you'll start getting that change. That's when people will start. That's when the school board, superintendent, city council, mayor, that's when they will start doing what needs to get done as far as the school system is concerned. Once you talk to those folks, or once you're getting action, once suddenly you have to deal with the voting block of people who are actually in the schools, who are actually there in the schools, right? So it's not just the parents and the teachers unions who are voting, but it's the actual it's the students that very visible and oppressed voting bloc that's languishing in the Philadelphia school district right now. That would be a game changer. I mean, that's a game changer that like no one right now. It's like they've started doing it in other places now. Philly is that's radioactive in Philly because in Philly, 500 people could get killed by the end of the year, and in Philly, people don't care. Anyway, let me take a break, and then when we come back on the other side. We're going to take a quick break. Speaking of Philly, we're going to talk about some recent recommendations that came out. There's a report that was commissioned laying out recommendations for how the Philadelphia Police Department should prepare for and respond to protests. This is part of problems that had arisen from those protests over the summer in the wake of the George Floyd murder. So we're bringing on former Denver Police Chief Robert White. He's going to be joining us very shortly to talk to us about those recommendations and what police departments can do during times of social justice movements and unrest and protests. Here on Reality Check 96.1 FM 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
With Internet Essentials from Comcast for only $9.95 a month, you get more. High-speed home internet service included. Peace of mind with X-Fi Advanced Security included. Access to millions of X-Fi Wi-Fi hotspots, that's included too. Internet Essentials from Comcast brings you affordable, high-speed internet to your home for only $9.95 a month. When you're connected, you're ready for anything. Visit InternetEssentials.com for more information. Taxes extra. Restrictions apply.
Black lives have always mattered at WURD Radio, one of the only Black-owned talk radio stations left in the country. For the new onWURD podcast, join me, Sarah Lomax-Reese, as I host a special 4-part series, 2020 in Black. From the pandemic to the global protests against systemic racism to the 2020 election, onWURD celebrates the full humanity and complexity of Black people in this pivotal year. Listen today using your favorite podcast service or visit WURDradio.com/2020 in Black. You can also ask your favorite device to play onWURD 2020 in Black. Check us out.
Wishing you and yours the very best this holiday season from the entire WURD family. This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app. Progressive and proud.
Independent Black Media.
Reality Check
With Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
We're back at it here on Reality Check 96.1 FM 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. You can watch us on Facebook.com/4WURD and YouTube.com/onWURD. If you're watching beyond the Greater Philly area or listening beyond the Greater Philly area, you can check out our live stream at WURDradio.com. Robert C. White is the former chief of police from Denver, Colorado. He was serving under current mayor Michael Hancock, who happens to be a good friend of mine, by the way. And so Robert White is joining us. He's here to talk about a recent report that was released, that was commissioned. It's now been released. It was examining the Philadelphia Police Department's response to protests, to demonstrations, and some civil unrest that happened earlier this year. The report was done by Montgomery, McCracken, Walker, and Rhodes, and also the CNA, and the title of that report is, let me see here, Philadelphia's Police Department Response to Demonstrations and Civil Unrest, May 30 to June 15, 2020. Former Chief White joins us here on Reality Check to talk about those recommendations from that report. Chief, how are you doing, sir?
I'm well today. How are you?
All right, good to have you on. I really appreciate this. So just give us a sort of an initial kind of outline or overview of this report. Who commissioned it, who's paying for it, what was the methodology and the analysis? How did you determine that these were the best recommendations moving forward?
Okay, great. I appreciate it. First, just to make sure we clarify that you're correct. I am the retired chief in Denver. Also been a chief in 5 other police departments and started my career in Washington, D.C.
That's right.
And from there, I kind of had retired and been part of a couple professional agencies that have made a request in this case, by the mayor, to take a review at how the Philly Police Department responded to the George Floyd protests. It was a request made by the mayor and also by the chief, and that we're being contracted by the city of Philadelphia. So what we're looking at as relates to getting to where you're asking us to assess is we've conduct our methodology is actually conducting interviews, collecting data, analyzing, and trying to reconstruct exactly what happened based on analyzing the information that we have. So we've looked at over 3,000 different pieces of document that included policies of the department, procedures of the department, after action report. Pretty much every command person was provided to produce an and after-action report. So we looked at that information. We reviewed hundreds of hours of video that included peaceful demonstration as well as demonstrations involved in looting and violence and vandalism. And we also conducted several interviews, virtual interviews. I interviewed 28, 29 officers, but we've also interviewed citizens that were involved in being they were in the presence. They were present during one or several of the demonstrations. We interviewed business people who were impacted by the by the demonstrations, and we even interviewed some city administrators, which include a couple members from the council as well as administrators that worked for the mayor and under the mayor. So after getting all of that information, gathering all that information, there were several things that we absolutely wanted to address as it relates to that. We wanted to address the planning and preparedness, the command and control, the resource management and how they allocated those resources, tactical response and use of force, information sharing and intelligence, and the perception and impact that the community had as it relates to what happened and how they perceived before, during, before the incident, and as a result of the incident, the Philadelphia Police Department. And based on all of that information, we came up with 77 recommendations. I will tell you that I believe the essence of those 77 recommendations was take a really careful look at their planning. Take a look at, obviously, as you well know, and anyone who lives in Philly, take a look at the use of CS gas.
Right.
Did a deep dive into training, specifically training as relates to how the officers respond to training pertaining to civil unrest. We certainly spend a significant amount of time dealing with the community and understanding the community's trust in the police department. We also touch base on the importance of de-escalation, how officers respond specifically in stressful situations, and understanding the importance of de-escalating those scenarios, and understanding that part of de-escalating those scenarios is really being calm and making decisions that are not potentially confrontational, but can actually de-escalate information versus escalate information. And also, we took a look at the equipment that the officers have in handling these type of demonstrations.
Let me ask, how do you were you able to compare Philadelphia to other cities on protest response? And you're absolutely right. You worked in several police departments that did quite a bit of time in the Metropolitan Police Department for D.C., I think Louisville, Kentucky Police Department as well, and elsewhere. And you know, D.C. MPD, I mean, it's probably like one of the busiest departments, if not the busiest department, when you talk about protest response, because it's Washington, D.C. So, and they've had to deal with a bit of litigation from protesters who've accused that department of abuse and misconduct in the past when it comes to protest response. How does Philly compare to other cities in terms of the way it plans and it responds to demonstrations?
Yeah, great question. Actually, Philly has a very good reputation in handling demonstrations, as you well know. I mean, they've handled hundreds of demonstrations over the course of probably the last couple of years, and some of them major demonstrations. They handled the DNC, the coming of the Pope, the visit of the Pope, the Super Bowl, and they did a phenomenal job in handling those demonstrations, as well as other demonstrations that are much smaller but impactful.
I got to give them something. They did a good job in those particular instances, right?
Yeah, they did. And what I think was the challenge this time was, to be perfectly candid, was the planning. They did plan for the demonstration in the time period that we're talking about is May 30th to June the 15th. They were aware of the fact that there was going to be a demonstration on May the 30th, so they did prepare a plan. I think where they fell short was a couple of reasons that they fell short. Number one, they didn't have all the resources, especially at the executive level, they had some vacancies at the executive level that ordinarily would have played a significant part in the planning process. And the other thing is, in light of the fact that Philly had not, probably during the career of most of the members that were in that department, they had not experienced a demonstration of the magnitude of the George Floyd protests. And that being said, I'm specifically talking about the amount of looting and violence and vandalism and burglary and destruction of property that occurred. That was something that the Philly Police Department just wasn't accustomed to. So in their planning process, they did not anticipate that would happen to the magnitude that it did. And that put them behind the eight ball. And it took 3 or 4 days before they could muster up the resources and come up really with strategic plans to get their arms around that. So,
hey, I'm real curious too, Chief White. What was the coordination like with other law enforcement agencies that are either in the city or typically coordinate with the city, like Pennsylvania State Troopers, also the Sheriff's Department, because I hear there was a little bit of tension there as well, because the Sheriff's Department was ready, it was on call, it was on standby. The Sheriff's Department, at least based on what some folks were telling me, the Sheriff's Department felt like they weren't really tapped into, they weren't initially, at least, they weren't communicated with from the Philadelphia Police Department. Philadelphia Police Department seemed to sort of go in alone on this. I don't know if that's accurate. I don't know, what did your report show you?
At first, let me say this. Philly, like many other departments around the country, as you all know, the protests and the looting and some of the other things that came along with, there were peaceful protests, but then the protests escalated in many cities across the country, like Philly. And many of those cities and the police departments were also caught off guard. So when you ask me comparing Philly to other departments as it relates to that, Philly was in a similar situation, not unlike many of the other departments across the country. Now, as it relates to their ability to work with other agencies, let's be mindful that Philly's a large police department. Actually, I think it's the 4th, 5th largest department in the country. So much of what they handle, they're able to address on their own. But under this particular scenario, they did use the Transportation Department. They did use the National Guard. They also used the Pennsylvania State Police, and they used some other small departments. The challenge with that, and one of the recommendations that we made was they didn't specifically, as it relates to the Pennsylvania State Police, they didn't have an MOU, a memorandum of understanding. So that created some challenges as it relates to what kind of tactics are you going to use versus what kind of tactics are we going to use. We have coordinated our response to dealing with that. And specifically when you talk about the state police, we're talking about the incident that occurred at 676. So one of the recommendations that was made as it pertains to not having coordination that they should have had with a lot of those agencies that they used was we recommended that they incorporate MOUs, memorandums of understanding, that clearly delineates when we can call you, what the expectations are, what we're asking you to do versus what you can do, and strategically having a seat at the table when the time permits, so we can strategize exactly what we're going to do and can coordinate our efforts.
Mm-hmm. Is there like a sort of a best practices? Is there like a manual? Or some kind of universal sense of how to go about this, how to best respond to a demonstration or a protest? Or some kind of guidance that is there federal guidance? Or something, some sort of universal guidance that police departments can turn to?
Yeah,
maybe in this instance, the Philadelphia Police Department failed to do in this particular instance.
Yeah, there are different organizations, PERF, and perhaps maybe even DOJ to some degree, that have done reports on a litany of different things: uses of force, handling demonstrations, handling unrest scenarios, and Philly has done some of those things as it relates to best practices, particularly as it relates to de-escalation. But obviously, we made some recommendations. Some of our recommendations were based on what we thought were some of the best practices. And again, there are different agencies that often offer different versions of what their definition of a best practice is. So you sort of have to kind of look to see, okay, does this fit into where we go? Does this address the needs of our department and at the same time address the needs of the community and the administration? So, yeah, there are, and police are aware of some of those best practices as it pertains to that, and they've used some of them certainly on a limited degree as it pertains to this particular the Floyd demonstration and how they were caught off guard. But like I said, in total fairness to them, that was not unlike many other departments around the country. But yeah, there are agencies that offer best practices and certain challenges pertaining to police. Probably the most common and frequently used among departments around the country is the use of force and shooting into moving vehicles.
I'm real curious too on like, okay, on whether or not I mean, you were commissioned by the mayor, by even the police commissioner herself. There's an institutional interest in this report and the analysis and the recommendations. But is there a conversation about this report right now, or the findings in this report, the recommendations with the police union? Because I mean, I have to be very blunt here, Chief White. Based on what I was seeing occurring across the country, during the summer of this social unrest, these protest movements, it seemed like police unions were running these police departments. It seemed as if police unions were the ones who were commanding their rank and file members about what to do and how to respond to these protesters, and completely circumventing the command chain from police departments, from the mayor and the police commissioners. And I'm wondering, like, okay, well, does the police union have any input in this process? Are you talking to the police union? Because apparently police unions, particularly the FOP in the city of Philadelphia, they're the ones that seem to call the shots when we have situations like this.
Well, I will probably defer that question to the commissioner or the executive staff of the police department. I'm sure that they would probably take issue with that, but I'm not in a position to comment as it relates to the relationship with the union versus management. So you might want to have a conversation with with the department.
I'm curious too. I was just out of curiosity. And that's definitely not to cast aspersions at you or to say that you did have, or I'm not. It's not even like a rhetorical question. I really am genuinely curious. Like, what's the extent of the police unions or the police union heads, McNesby's involvement in this report and recommendation? Because it seems like he's making all the decisions for the Philadelphia Police Department as far as situations like this or issues with respect to police misconduct. So that's one. So it's a genuine curiosity. I don't, and I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't know, but I just wanted to check to see if that conversation. But it is something I really am genuinely curious about. Definitely when you have those conversations with the folks who commission this, ask them, like, hey, like, what's the talk? What's the conversation like with the police union? How do we make the actions that are necessary to carry out these recommendations? Because in the recommendations you talk about things like strengthening police advisory councils within the police districts, for example. But how do we make some of these actions or some of these recommendations more accessible to the general public, right? So how do the citizens, in your mind, Chief, or based on this report, what are ways in which we can make citizens more direct stakeholders and leaders in conversations like this?
Right. A great question. And if you dig down into, I guess, maybe complaints in the recommendations we've made in the latter 60s and the early 70s, you will see that we recommended that the department needs to expand its advisory board. The advisory board consists of members. They need to expand it where perhaps up the districts, all the district commanders should have advisory boards, and that those advisory boards would normally, what tradition would happen is there's an exchange between the department and the residents as it relates to the quality of life issues that are occurring to them. We've, in giving those citizens a seat at the table, we also recommended that the community, members of the community should be part of the training process. Invite them to the department, to the academy, get their perspective on what they're seeing and how they're impacted by the services of the police department, and have the department have an exchange with them of explaining what they do and why we do it. We also made a recognition, because this is really a trust issue, and this is a pervasive issue in policing across this country. So, I mean, departments have really been attempting, and I will say Philly has already made some recommendations, or have already taken, we make recommendations. They've already taken some steps to really kind of close that gap. One of the things that we recommended that I think is really significant is that when an officer sees something inappropriate happens, that officer should have the responsibility to report that. And that officer should be held accountable if he or she does not support that. I mean, those are significant things you can do to build that trust, and let the community know that, you know what, our service is about you. And this is about service above self. This is not about us. This is about our responsibility to you as citizens who actually pay us and expect for us to provide a professional service to them. Using, and when the time comes, using the minimum, if force has to be used, using the minimum force necessary. And again, the Philly Police Department has a de-escalation scale that really speaks to when you should use force, what type of force should be used under the circumstances, and all of those amount to starting with the minimum amount of force, the minimum amount of this, the minimum amount of that. Anything that you can do to mitigate a situation versus aggravating a situation. And they have already started working on that.
And in all fairness to, police who find themselves caught in situations like that, right? Because I mean, there's another side to this conversation as well, I think, and it's about educating the public and potential protesters on what's acceptable, lawful, free speech protest. Just because you're out there protesting doesn't mean, I mean, the vast majority of protesters were peaceful, but let's just be real, let's be honest here. I mean, there were some bad actors during this moment of unrest. There were some things that were done, like, from burning up police cars to breaking into stores to vandalizing places, things that people shouldn't have been doing during just protests. And just, voice your outrage and put it on the record. So how do we go about educating the public on what's lawful, what's acceptable free speech protest that's supported by the First Amendment versus what are clear violations of the law, such as vandalism and violence? Because I mean, you're suddenly, engaging in violence or vandalism during a protest. You're also infringing on other people's rights and civil liberties when you do something like that. Right. So I mean, I'm acknowledging. I mean, most protesters are peaceful, but I just want to acknowledge that there were those few bad actors out there, and we know folks who were. So I wonder about that education piece. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chief White.
Yeah. So Philly has what they call a civil affairs unit, and that unit's primary responsibility is to, prior to a demonstration and even during a demonstration, connect with whoever is the organizer or the leaders of those demonstrations, and go over the rules of engagement. What you can do, what you can't do, what we can do, what we can't do, and they've been pretty successful in doing that under most protests. But be mindful, this was a protest where once it went to violence and looting and burglarizing and damaging property, there was no real loot. There was no leader. They had no interest in communicating with the police. So the police response then is, as these incidents are occurring, give warnings, tell people what's illegal, what's legal, what's not illegal. But what the ideal situation, which happens most of the time, is you have a conversation with the organizers or the leaders of particular protesters, and you go over the ground rules, what you can do, what you can't do, what's the difference between what's legal versus what's illegal. But again, this protest, unlike many of the other ones that have been occurring across the country, they did not have, they weren't interested in talking to the police, first of all, and they didn't necessarily have a organizer as it pertains to that they could reach out to, because as you're very mindful that this didn't just occur in one place. there was disorder throughout several locations throughout the city.
We've been talking with one of the lead researchers, also leaders on this report, this new analysis, which was commissioned by the City of Philadelphia and Philadelphia Police Department, looking at the Philadelphia police response to protests that happened, demonstrations that happened over the summer. He's also, Robert C. White is also former police chief of the Denver Police Department, also worked for a number of years as within the Metropolitan Police Department, the District of Columbia, Louisville, Kentucky. I think it was Deputy Police Chief in Louisville, Kentucky. He's been joining us here. He's now retired, and he's working with organizations. Are you working directly with CNA? That's what I wasn't.
Yes.
Is CNA the consult? Right. CNA is the consulting firm that the city commissioned to do this report and these recommendations. And I appreciate this too. It's definitely something I want to explore a bit more, and then hopefully we can avoid it. Hopefully the city of Philadelphia and other cities can avoid a situation like this as we head into obviously a future where there's more inevitable social protests and demonstrations and unrest. But Chief White, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate this.
Hey, thank you, and you have a safe and joyful holiday.
Happy holidays to you. Thank you. Be safe out there. Thanks again, Chief. All right, let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, we're supposed to be talking with Jenna Henry of the Coalition to Abolish Death by Incarceration. And so they've been demanding that Governor Tom Wolf release people from prison during COVID-19. So we're going to talk about that, the condition inside prisons and jails throughout Pennsylvania during pandemic, how that is a serious problem. And this doesn't seem like the Commonwealth is doing quite enough about it. So Jenna is going to be joining us very shortly here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Jeff Brown from Brown's Family ShopRites and Fresh Grocers. Are you thinking about a part-time job to help out with the cost of the holidays? We have plenty of openings. You can apply online at shoprite.com/careers or freshgrocer.com/careers. Come join the Brown family today and help us serve the people of Philadelphia. Have a great holiday.
Jobs, entrepreneurship opportunities, small business resources, and financial literacy. Livelihood. The new initiative from WURD Radio to connect Philadelphians to resources to help take the next steps in their professional lives. WordWorks.com features career readiness tools, entrepreneurship resources, funding opportunities, and events to expand your livelihood. Visit WURDworks.com right now and take the next step in your professional journey. Livelihood is supported by the Nightland Fest's Local News Transformation Fund, Borealis Philanthropies Racial Equity and Journalism Fund, and the Solutions Journalism Network. Want the latest in Word swag? Check out the shop tab on WURDradio.com. Hoodies, tees, and more in a variety of colors. The shop tab on WURDradio.com. Show the world that you're all about black. Talk media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. Jenna Henry is joining us. She's online now representing the Coalition to Abolish Death by Incarceration, organization that is demanding Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf release people from prison as pandemic rages on. Jenna, how are you doing? Thanks for joining us. Good morning. Good afternoon.
I'm good. How are you?
All right. Okay. Hanging in there. Thank you so much for this. Appreciate your time. You've been organizing around this for quite some time, the issue of inmates in prison systems during COVID-19. How bad is that situation right now?
It's pretty bad. The way that we're describing the situation inside the prisons right now is basically imagine having to quarantine in your bathroom for the entire length of this pandemic. That's what's happening inside our prisons right now. People are not allowed out of their cells. In some places are allowing them out for 1 hour a day, and in that hour they have to get a shower. They might have time to make a phone call, or they might just stand in line and not even be able to make the phone call. Some prisons have actually instituted an even stronger lockdown and are now only allowing people out every other day. instead of every day. On top of that, the medical care is inadequate. A lot of people are going without their medications, without treatments that they would normally get because there's no movement allowed inside the prisons. It's a pretty frightening situation.
Yeah. What's your recommendation? So what should the governor? You're saying the governor, or the coalition has been saying that the governor. You had a vigil last week about this. You all have been sounding the alarms about this for quite some time now. But how should correctional facilities and officials handle this? Who should they be releasing from jail? I mean, I know you were saying particularly it should be a no-brainer to release elderly inmates as soon as possible from the situation, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Anybody we want the governor to use his power of reprieve. When this first started, the governor did put out a reprieve order, but there were so many conditions on it that only 106 people have actually been released through this reprieve order. And particularly people who are high risk, who have autoimmune diseases, who are older. In Pennsylvania, we have a really high number of geriatric prisoners because of our kind of archaic sentencing guidelines. We have a lot of prisoners that are over the age of 55. People particularly like Russell Maroon Schultz is somebody that we're particularly pushing for. He is 77 years old. He has been in prison for 50 years. He has stage 4 cancer. He has been diagnosed with COVID. Right. And he is of no danger to anybody. He is 77 years old. There's no reason that people like him shouldn't be able to be released to the care of their family. We understand that the governor has to balance public safety, along with who he chooses to release. But, once people age out of crime, once you reach a point of geriatric, you're very likely no longer a danger to society. And in a situation like this, these people weren't sentenced to death. The governor actually has a moratorium on the death penalty. So we don't understand why he's allowing, people to die in prison because of COVID.
I'm curious here too, Jenna. Are we assuming that everyone who gets released, particularly inmates who are aging out of the system or who, like the situation you just described, I mean, are we assuming that all of those inmates or all of those inmates from special populations have family that they can go back to? Because are there situations where maybe they don't have family? Is that something that maybe, I don't know, state officials worry about, that, okay, maybe their families are estranged, or they're estranged from their families, and so this is a particular cause, this is a particular set of medical obligations that we just don't want to be stuck with. We don't want to be responsible for if they're not inside a correctional complex.
I think that could definitely be a part of it. And I'm sure that there certainly are people who are incarcerated and have been incarcerated for a long time that don't have family to go back to. A lot of people do lose touch with their families over the years. However, if a person doesn't have somewhere to go, or anybody that's released from prison has to submit a home plan that then has to be approved by the parole board. So if somebody doesn't have a home plan, then they can't be released. And so we don't see any reason why this situation should be any different than that.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. That makes definitely sense. We're talking right now with Jenna Henry. She is with the Coalition to Abolish Death by Incarceration. Where can people get more information? At one point I did know the coalition's website. It just escaped me at the moment. Jenna, where can people get more information on the coalition?
So where the decarceratepa.info.
That's it.
That has all the information about our demands of Governor Wolf and of the DOC. So the Coalition Against Death by Incarceration is only one organization that has been involved. We actually have 41 different organizations that have been organizing around this and have put together this list of demands. So we are only one facet of the entire picture. So if you want to learn more about our demands, you can go to decarceratepa.info. If you want to know specifically about the Coalition to Abolish Death by Incarceration, it is decarceratepa.info/CADBI, with CADBI.
Got it. Thanks for that. No, I appreciate that. And you can learn more about those demands. How responsive has state officials been to your demands? I mean, is the governor's office saying anything to you?
It's been pretty much crickets. We are doing what we can, but we can't force the governor to do anything, unfortunately. And it's an unfortunate situation where society kind of has this idea that people are in prison because they're dangerous. And whereas we as activists, we know that couldn't be further from the truth. But so politically, there isn't a whole lot of motivation for the governor to actually act because of the way society views people who are incarcerated. It's really unfortunate because, if they were basing this off of facts and data, they would see that, older people who are released from prison and people who have been sentenced to a sentence of life without parole and are then later released actually have the lowest recidivism rate of only about 1%. For drug offenses, for example, the recidivism rate is over 40%. So, if they were basing this off of facts and data, older folks would be the first people in line to be released from prison. Unfortunately, they're playing politics with people's lives.
Do you have any allies within the state legislature to put pressure on the governor about this?
We do have a couple, and now that Joanna McClinton is the House Minority Leader, we're hoping that that's going to help us quite a bit. Joanna is an ally of ours and an ally of the movement. And we have Senator Sharif Street has always been an ally of ours, Representative Chris Rabb. So we do have a few really strong allies in the legislature. Like I said, now that Joanna is the House Minority Leader, we're really hoping that the governor is going to start to listen.
Yeah, the other thing I'm wondering about too. Okay, and so definitely looking at special populations or people that have all sorts of pre-existing conditions or chronic diseases that they already were dealing with before pandemic, and now situations turn from bad to worse, turn terribly sideways because of COVID-19, the infection. We're talking about elderly people, seniors. Are you saying that like all inmates that are facing some sort of high level of risk? Because people might have concerns there if you start having a conversation about all inmates and not distinguishing between, because there are some folks who are in prisons, who are in jail systems, who committed violent crimes, and people are going to worry about that. I mean, there is a worry in Philadelphia about that, particularly with there being a gun violence crisis. So I wonder if that conversation is taking place, or that also explains some of the trepidation on the part of the governor and other public officials. I wonder.
It does. Like I said, if this were based on facts and data and the studies that have been done around it, then that concern would be eased, because like I mentioned, those are the populations that have the lowest recidivism rates. And we certainly aren't advocating for just opening up the prison doors and letting everybody out. There are certainly people who are a danger to society and do need to be kept away. So we're not saying let everybody out. We're saying let everybody out who can be safely released, and not to just automatically exclude people who have been convicted of violent crimes, because people, a lot of the people who have committed violent crimes who are in prison, they did so when they were young. We're talking about, people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who committed crimes when they were 18. They are not the same people now that they were when they committed that crime. They have remorse. They have changed their lives, and they're not that person anymore. So they can be safe release, and not just that. We think that they can be an asset to our community. They can help mentor youth who may have lost their way. Who better to help young people avoid living a life of crime than the people who actually lived it and then went on to change their life.
Yeah. And talk a little bit, expound on that. You did kind of hint at that earlier on, Jenna, but I think it's really important to make this point, or to underscore this point here, why it's important for people to be concerned about inmates who are dealing with COVID-19 inside prison and jail cells. That this is obviously there are the moral arguments, but there is a practical argument here too. The moral arguments are significant, but just kind of explain that, because it is difficult for people to sort of understand why. Because some people were going to ask, well, why should I be concerned about people who are in prison? I've got my own problems that I'm dealing with here right now. Either I'm trying to avoid infection, or I am infected, or I just had a family member die outside here in the world. Why should I be so compassionate about, or so concerned about, people who are living inside jails, people who don't have absolutely nothing to do with me? And you made this point earlier on. You're absolutely right. There is that stigmatization around the inmate, around the incarcerated, that, okay, well, they're there because every last one of them, 100% of them, did something bad, when we know that that's not the case. That's not completely the case. But explain why this is so important, why people, this is a crisis as for the general public, just as much as it is a crisis for those who are inside the jails and the prison systems.
Well, so I think there's a couple points to make here. First of all, the idea that everybody that's in prison deserves to be there is a huge misconception, a very commonly accepted one across society, but it is a huge misconception. Not everybody deserves to be there. You can end up getting a murder one charge just for being a lookout. You don't even have to pull the trigger. So that's an issue. A lot of these people don't necessarily deserve to be there. These are still human beings. These are people's family members. These are people's sons and daughters, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers. And the people are terrified for their family. We work a lot with the families of incarcerated people, and they are absolutely terrified that, their children aren't coming home from prison because they made a stupid mistake when they were 18, or, some even younger. We still, there are plenty of people who are convicted as juveniles being, who are still serving prison terms. But if the moral part doesn't appeal, then, there's the fact that we are wasting a ton of money incarcerating these people. It costs the state of Pennsylvania something like $40,000 per year to incarcerate one person. That makes absolutely no sense. That money could be much better used in other areas. And on top of that, the people that it's being spent to incarcerate right now, those people could be out and be an asset to the community, rather than a drain on our tax dollars. And right now with COVID, with the economy as low as it is, the legislature really should be looking at ways to cut costs in every way possible. Well, this is one area where they could really cut down costs and use that money to better help people who need it.
Exactly. I think that you're correct on that. Also, people should be concerned because these are government agencies, right? These are state government agencies that are overseeing, that are running these facilities, running on taxpayer dollars, and it's from another standpoint, like you don't want. Is it really acceptable for government agencies in a country or in a system that's supposed to be so-called democratic, treating other human beings? You wouldn't want to be treated that way by a government agency. So why would you want other human beings to be treated that way? And so human beings being treated in that way, or being confined in such a way that their risk for COVID-19 is being elevated, that reflects on government's treatment of its citizens overall. There's that other issue too. You know what I mean? So it's like the fact. It's chilling. I think it's a bit chilling to me that the governor doesn't even respond to it, because then it's like, okay, well, what else are you as a government capable of? If you're capable of doing this to other human beings in a prison system, what are you capable of doing on a normal basis to people, to other human beings, taxpayers, residents, citizens outside of a prison system? And, people need to ask that question. We've been talking with Jenna Henry. Jenna Henry is with the Coalition to Abolish Death by Incarceration. Go to decarceratepa.info/CADBI for more information. Decarceratepa.COVID-demands to look at their demands about the incarcerated folks who are incarcerated at the moment, but dealing with elevated risk of COVID-19, serious issue. So I'm sure we'll be talking about it more. Well, let's hope it gets resolved as soon as possible, because there's really like no time on anyone's side as far as this is concerned. But we'll keep an eye on it. Thanks so much, Jenna, for joining us. Appreciate you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
All right, good. We'll talk with you again, I'm sure. Happy holidays, and let's take a break. Take care. Let's take a break, and when we come back, open phone lines at 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break, and then we'll be right back with open phone lines.
Always Best Care is a great place to work. Flexibility,
leadership, purpose,
great benefits.
There's never a dull moment.
Diversity, inclusion, compasión.
We love our jobs. If you're looking for a great place to work, you can join our compassionate Team Green. You can apply online at teamgreenabc.com or call 267-909-9248.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Monday through Thursday, keep it locked to WURD Radio. At 6 a.m., start your day with the Power Hour, hosted by Bishop Dwayne Royster and Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler. At 7, it's Wake Up with WURD with Solomon Jones. At 10 a.m., it's Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Then at 1 p.m., it's The Source, hosted by Andrea Lawful-Sanders on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and the Black Women's Leadership Council on Wednesdays. At 4 p.m., it's Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Then at 7, it's Save Space with Sincerely Sarita. At 9 p.m., round up your day with Keeping It Real with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keep your dial locked
to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app.
Or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio
and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Also, don't forget about the virtual marketplace, the WURD, Buy Black virtual holiday marketplace. If you are in search of that perfect gift, we have perfect black businesses who are out there to provide that for you. And we do that through our virtual holiday marketplace. We couldn't do it in person, but we set up something virtual. We've got you covered on that score. Even though it's been a rough time, it continues to be a rough time for everyone out there, but at least we got the virtual holiday marketplace. So you've got less than a day left. You really got half a day at best left before Christmas tomorrow. So you might have some time out there if you just stay safe, keep it socially distanced. I don't know about online orders, so it's looking like if you're going to do online orders, you're going to have to do some post a lot of us are going to have to do that. I've still got mail. I think I've got some packages stuck in China somewhere because there's a lot of these, like different items and clothing and things of sort. You'd find out that everything's, a lot of things are being developed in China. But anyway, still waiting on some packages, and I know a lot of other folks are too. But do go to wordradio.com/marketplace, wordradio.com/marketplace, or wordworks.com/marketplace, and you can find out how, because, well, it's not just Christmas. Wait a second. Got Kwanzaa coming up. Kwanzaa starts on Saturday, day after. So the gift giving continues, especially as it relates to us Black families. So yeah, the holidays are extended for us, and we try to make the best with what we've got, and we're doing that with the virtual holiday marketplace. So yeah, it still continues. Yeah, we'll still continue to let you know about the holiday marketplace, because I'll be on there next week too. Wordradio.com/marketplace, wordworks.com/marketplace as well. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Let me go to Maurice out of Southwest, calling in for a reality check. Maurice, what's good?
Charles, remember one thing. Happy wife, happy life. Make sure you get her a great present.
All right, take it care of. Got it covered. Thank you, sir.
I knew you would handle it. I just wanted that. I wanted that to go out to you so everybody else can hear what they need to do. I don't care what you do for anybody else.
That's right.
Me, myself, I got my sexy boxers waiting for the evening time tomorrow. I know what to do, wife. But listen,
I hear that.
Let's get to the facts of the thing. I hear you asking a lot of questions, people a lot of questions that you already know the answers to. But listen, why you keep bringing in outside people to ask them about what Philly's doing? You already know Philly's unusual from anywhere else. You got to get Philly people, retired cops, maybe cops that don't work in Philly anymore, but they work outside the city in some of the counties. That's who you need to bring in to talk to.
Well, I mean, apparently the city spent some of your money. They spent some of our money to go towards this report. I wanted to find out about it. People have the right to know.
Well, no, they, what you said was right. They spent our money. And I didn't give them permission to do that report, so they owe me. But listen, you got to talk to the three amigos who are either Kenny, McNesby, or Miss Outlaw.
Right.
You got to get them on. You're probably not going to get on this year, but
two out of three. We've had one. We had one on. She finally came on at one point. But 2 out of Mayor Kenny's not. He's not coming back on here.
Well, you know how it is.
We've tried. I mean, keep telling him. I mean, call his office. Say, hey, listen, we want to continue talking. Remember, he used to come on once a month. He stopped doing that once he got reelected.
Yeah, because he didn't keep. Because it's been over a year since he made the 100-day promise. Remember, he did that last Thanksgiving in that era. About
I thought, Maurice, I thought he was going to create a joint task force. I thought, okay, he's going to roll out the task force.
No, we don't roll like that. Look, Charles, I told you how to solve the problem, but nobody wants to listen to a guy that knows the city and knows the inmates that's out there. We got 40 zip codes in Philadelphia, right? It's only 12 zip codes that's acting up. The other zip codes don't get any murders or the shootings or less. If you hit those 12 zip codes hard, lock them down, you won't have all this killing. Because people are fighting for scraps right now. That's why so many shootings and so many murders. People are frustrated. They don't have any money in their pockets. There's no jobs. There's no real education here. And gentrification and crime go together. That's to get the older people that own homes, that bought the homes maybe 20, 30 years ago, want to get away from the violence. So it's so much violence they got to move. An area that they used to could walk down the street and sit on their porch, they can't do it anymore because people aren't buying property. People are either on a program or they rent. That's what's going on now. You don't see nobody moving in the neighborhood. I just bought a house out here in Southwest. That don't happen. Everybody's on a Section 8 or they rent. Or they no, even worse than that. It's so many rooming houses. Can you believe that? That sounds like something prehistoric. There's a bunch of rooming houses around here, but you may got 2 or 3 rooming houses on a block.
Yeah.
And guess who own the rooming houses? State reps. So, we already talked about the failure of the state reps, so I don't even want to get into that anymore. And also, what do you call them, state senators, they're just as much to blame.
state reps and state senators.
What goes on now is you talking about we're going to hit that 500 mark. We might even pass it because it's too much time for these things to go down. Right before New Year's and Christmas, you're going to get maybe 10 to 12 over this weekend.
Violence and crime always spikes during the holidays.
I mean, if you look at any TV show that's on, like any of the major series about crime, every crime show has gentrification in it. Every crime show, they get the gangs to come in, or a group of guys that bother the seniors, rob the seniors, shoot the seniors, so they can get that property, get them out off the neighborhood that they want to buy.
That's true. Hey, Maurice, I got to let you go because I got to thank you. Happy holidays to you. Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, all that good stuff. I'll talk to you all next week. I'll be back on Monday. Not taking any time off from the holidays. I mean, where am I going to go? So I want to be here with y'all. We can all hang out throughout the holidays because there's no place to go. Yusuf out of Oak Lane calling it for a reality check. Yusuf, got a couple more minutes left. How you doing?
Yes, I just want to get my point across real quick. I know personally Russell Haroon Schultz. Okay, he's from West Philadelphia. He was falsely convicted of a murder against a police officer. I think back like in the 60s, early 70s. I forget just what decade. But me and him were neighbors when I was at SCI Dallas. And he used to tell me about his case. He was charged with escaping from a place called Farview when he was sent there. It's a place where they think you're criminally insane. And that's why they won't let him out, because they have a grudge against him for escaping from Farview. The guy that he escaped with, the guards at Huntington killed him. And that's why they also hate people from Philadelphia. They discriminate against you if you're from Philadelphia. No matter what kind of crime you're convicted of, if you're from Philadelphia, they don't want to let you out. And if they have to let you out, say like you maxed out like I did, they do things that make it hard for you on the streets, like they stole my GED diploma. They destroyed all my documents. When they transfer you around, you can't take your stuff with you. They ship it. And when they ship it, they go through your belongings. They destroyed my GED diploma, my trade certificate. When I was in prison, I went to school. I stayed in school. I finished high school in prison. I took up a trade in prison. I took up a college course and all that. But they hate to see you come out and do good if you're the type of person that they hate. Not just because you're from Philadelphia, because you're smarter than them. I had more degrees and diplomas than the average prison guard did. And they hate that. And that's why they don't want to let that brother out and other brothers like him, simply because of their hatred of people from Philadelphia. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusuf. I appreciate you. No, they do. Pennsylvania definitely doesn't like its very lucrative gym called Philadelphia. So, and I mean, that's just one thing that's just that has to change at some point. All right, that wraps. I have to wrap this Thursday, end of the official or public holiday week for Reality Check. But obviously, we go into next week, and we will continue the holiday adventures as we go through the holiday, the 7 days of Kwanzaa. So that's coming up. But Merry Christmas to everyone out there for those who are celebrating that. And happy Merry Holidays. Everyone be safe. Everyone be safe tonight. Please don't be out there unless you absolutely have to. If you are out there, please be safe and be just considerate of everyone else around you. Please take your time driving, because there's a lot of crazy driving out there because everybody's rushing around. Where you going to go? Where you got to go? Where you got to go? Slow down. Slow down. So crash and vehicular accidents, fatalities from that are also spiking in Philly. So please be careful out there, and please look out for everyone around you. Look out for your family, household, and the community around you. I'm Charles Ellison. I'm signing off this Thursday edition. We are headed into The Source. That is coming up next with Andrea Lawful Sanders. Everyone in Philly and beyond, I want you to stay sharp, stay smart, and please stay safe. I will talk to you on Monday, 10 a.m., God willing. Have a great evening, great afternoon, all that good stuff. Take care.